One day, a huge spaceship appeared in the sky and the apocalypse came to Earth. 10 years ago, the world changed. 90% of living things were corpses and turned into scary zombie-like monsters. Countless so-called roulettes descended from the sky. For themselves, they carried only destruction. Gradually, people discovered the crystals from zombies' head, and they can be used to spin the roulette wheel and mine magic items. In roulette can drop all the right items and resources, such as weapons, even rare medicines that allow you to develop supernatural abilities. Because of this, the survivors fought over roulette. This whole world has become a cruel and ruthless game of survival, in which there are no winners, some for the sake of staying alive. One could only accept the government's terms and submit to the. So did our hero. To survive, he discarded all his magical qualities and principles. This was the only thing that gave him hope of survival. After years of training and hard work, he finally got a place in the cell. He believed that his future life would be bright, and it would finally get easier. He thought that if he worked hard, he could survive. That's the way it was supposed to be, but this world is rotten to the core. Member of his team, whom he considered a brother and friend, has betrayed him to his own. And that seems to be the end of his game. How suddenly he finds himself in the house he lived in years ago, still in a pocket of apocalypse. All this is like a terrible dream. His long-dead beloved Bai-Shai lies beside him. Jin was confused. He couldn't think in everything he saw around him. It was only the date on the clock that made him realize that he had been reborn. And he was in the apocalypse. It is now September 10th on the calendar. It was last time on this day that the apocalypse occurred. And then he realizes that rebirth is his to change himself. His precious 10 years of apocalypse experience is his strongest weapon. Just as Jean was about to leave, she woke up and asked in a sleepy voice where he had gone. But Jean, she didn't care about her at all, for he knew the whole truth. He had inherited a large sum of money from his parents, which he had not touched last time. But now he must use this money, because after the beginning of the apocalypse, they will be useless. The 19th reason why Jin is so indifferent with Shai is that for a long time behind his back, she met another guy. And with him, it was only out of pity. Initially, Shai Almi had evidence that she was discovered with someone on the side. In his past life, when the apocalypse came, Jin used all his strength to succeed by Shi. But she decided to dump him and chose her former classmate Jun. When Shi realized he was hiding his cheating, it's too late to yell at Jin and says that Jun is prettier and stronger than him, and Jin is just a clown. Before leaving, Jin simply advised her to be careful. He knew that in the future, Jun would sell his body in exchange for 3 cans of beans. That's too much time. Jin's back on the dope. They've got a lot to do before the apocalypse begins, and time is running out. He needs to prepare medicine, food, and equipment for the coming apocalypse. The first thing Jin did was arrive at the hospital, because medicine is the most important resource. Without them in the apocalypse, you can't survive a day. In addition to the medicines, Jin took some instruments and syringes from the hospital. This kind of kit will make it possible to perform the easiest operations. Jin took as much medicine as he could carry. Only the nurse who caught him thought he was a thief, even though he paid for the medicine. The next item on his list was comfortable and sturdy clothing. After all, the weaker you are, the easier it is to catch you. As suddenly, Jin's attention was drawn to an old friend of his, with whom he had lived through the entire apocalypse. And that friend was the machete he had used in a past life. He considered it the perfect weapon in the face of the apocalypse. Having bought everything he needs, all Jin has to do is find the last thing he needs to start the apocalypse. And that's roulette. Apocalypse roulette is also known as the trading wheel. It is the only source of resources for survivors. Water, food, gear, even special abilities can all be obtained by spinning the wheel. Judging from his memories, the first wheel of the apocalypse must be here. He should be the first to use it, no matter what it takes. The first wheel will appear on the grounds of the guarded Wade mansion, and entry to which is strictly forbidden. But pretty soon, it won't make any sense, because the apocalypse is only minutes away. If Jin is the first to turn the wheel, he'll have a huge advantage. Naturally, Jin was immediately attacked by the guards because he had entered a forbidden territory. But he didn't care at all. On the clock is exactly 7 p.m., which means that in a few more seconds, the world will change forever. And everything that was once valuable will be dust. And here he comes. The cruiser destroyer, whose appearance means the beginning of the apocalypse. Naturally, ordinary people were horrified to see a spaceship in the sky. Only Jin knew what lay ahead. Just as 10 years ago, one question plagued him. Why did they leave the wheel and make people fight among themselves? If history repeats itself, if this game of survival continues, This time Jin must grab the chance he's been given and become stronger. This time it's gonna be different. Jin won't miss his chance. As suddenly the spaceship began to emit incomprehensible sounds similar to the rumble of locusts. People couldn't believe their eyes. They thought it was a movie being filmed, and it wasn't real. But Jin knew exactly what that strange rumbling meant. The spaceship is preparing to attack. Each of their attacks lasts no more than minutes, and in just 5 minutes, the world will turn into ruin. There will be monsters running through the streets, with the goal of killing as many people as possible. Hoping to escape the impending attack, Jin sneaks into the mansion, where he is greeted by the landlady. Before he can make sense of anything, an explosion of incredible power goes off outside the window. It's not safe to be in this house. Attacks have begun! The spaceship dropped over 100 bombs on the city, and this is just the beginning. With just the first attack, the ship wiped out most of the city and its population. There was chaos in the streets. People were terrified. Along with the bombs, the ship dropped what looked like giant capsules, and they're much more dangerous than bombs, because they contained poisonous gas that turned people into monsters. The most dangerous thing about this gas was that it instantly killed all humanity and common sense in people. And in seconds, ordinary people became monsters, ready to kill even their own family. The owner of the house where Jin was hiding was terrified. She didn't understand why the people in the streets were screaming so much, or what was going on at all. The girl threatened the genie that if he didn't leave her house immediately, she would call the guards. Jin didn't intend to stay with her long. He just wanted to wait for the wheel to appear. Suddenly, a bright light came from the kitchen. Walking into the kitchen, Jin made sure the first wheel had already appeared. The wheel of exchange appeared here, just as he had expected. Jin noticed that one of the compartments has a gene medicine enhancement. This is the most valuable reward of the first rank wheel, capable of tripling physical strength. Except there's a little problem. You need 7 crystals to spin that wheel. Jin only has 5. Jin was greatly surprised to see this. After all, in his previous life, only 5 crystals were enough to spin a rank 1 wheel. The genie, in a panic, began to look at what he had enough of his crystals for. After all, there's no time to mine them now. And to his eyes, he's been dealt a lucky card. His crystals should be enough. The girl was horrified and asked Jin to explain what was even going on. Where did this wheel come from and what was the lucky card? Jin is surprised that this girl didn't turn into a zombie, so she's resistant to the poison, and maybe she can be his trusty sidekick in the future. Jin decides to tell her what a lucky card is. A lucky card increases a special ability. For example, it enhances your 5 senses, or gives you a pet. Naturally, she did not believe a word he said. What person in their right mind would believe that? Not wanting to listen to this nonsense, she decided to call the guards. When she got to the door, she heard that the shouting in the street had stopped. But it didn't bother her in the least. As soon as she opened the door, she was jumped on by a zombie with a gray crystal in his forehead. She should have believed Jin's words before she opened the door. When she saw the monster, the girl begged the genie to save her. She tried with all her might to stop the zombie from biting her, but she was running out of strength. I think it was the end of her. But still, Jin came to her rescue. He couldn't just let that girl die. Plus, she might be useful to him in the future. Thanks to killing this zombie, Jin now has 6 crystals. And all we have to do to spin the wheel is get 1 more. When she saw the crystal that Jin had taken out, the girl immediately noticed that it was the same as the one on the wheel. She finally realized that Jin was telling the truth, when suddenly 2 more zombies came running through the open door. This is just in time, because with their crystals, the genie has just enough to use the wheel. Has been preparing for this moment for years. It's easy for him to kill 2 zombies, especially since he's already attached to this girl. His weapon level is amazing. You can tell he's been practicing. He took out 2 men in 1 blow. Now that they're done, it's time to get some crystals and finally get your reward. The girl was surprised at how easily Jin killed the monsters. She asked him in a trembling voice, "How did you do it?" And then Jin says, "Oh yeah, we didn't have time to get acquainted. My name is Kim Jin-ha. I apologize for barging in on you so suddenly. What's your name?" The girl extended her trembling hand and said, "My name is Mu Xin Fei. Nice to meet you, Jin. What's going on here? Can you explain to me?" But when he heard her name, Jin froze. After all, that name was very familiar to him. In a past life, Fei was the 9th star. At her hands, killed more than 1,000 zombies. She personally led a squad of the strongest survivors. But that's 10 years from now. Right now, she's just an ordinary girl who's really scared. Jin tells Faye that the Earth has been invaded, and most people have turned into zombies. But it's unclear who the invasion was. And the few of them who weren't affected by the invasion and didn't become zombies, like him and her, would fight for their lives. But Faye kept hoping that the government and the military would come and save them. But Jin was quick to upset her, and said that if the government and military hadn't collapsed yet, they would do so in the next couple hours. Looking at the poor frightened girl, Jin didn't understand how she became the 9th star. If she could become one, there must be something special about her. But right now, he needs a helper. So Jin decides to tell her a few rules for surviving in the zombie world. The first thing to know is that this wheel is called the Apocalypse Wheel. Most of the resources in the zombie world come from this wheel. If a survivor wants to spin the wheel and get an item in it, they must first fill those slots with crystals that can be mined from dead zombies. The number of crystals needed for one spin depends on the rewards that can be caught in that wheel. Faye slowly began to understand how things work. She figured out there were many other wheels, as suddenly Faye asked how Jin knew all this. Such a question made Jin a little confused. Jin couldn't just tell her he was reborn. So I'm trying to distract her from that conversation. He asked if she wanted to spin the wheel. Meanwhile, Jin decided to go on a zombie hunt to get more crystals. He told Faye to lock the doors and not to open them for anyone but him. So far, all that scares her is the thought of zombies. So when she heard that Jin was going to go hunting them, she was shocked. Meanwhile, the streets were already filled with zombies. They were getting bigger and bigger by the second. But for the genie, that wasn't much of a problem. Especially since the zombies were much weaker now than in the future. So now, he should accumulate as many crystals as he could while he could. The more crystals he has, the stronger he will become. Jin didn't even feel comfortable fighting these zombies. It was like he was fighting drunks. All day he spent hunting down dozens of zombies. Even so, Jin didn't even think of stopping. After all, the most important thing now was to become strong as soon as possible. Suddenly, there was a woman's cry for help. A barefoot, wounded, frightened girl was running toward Jin, chased by a pair of zombies. When she saw Jin, the girl had hope for salvation. When she felt safe, she calmed down a little. Jin, without further ado, took these zombies' heads off, 2 more to his credit. And here comes the main danger of the zombie world. The seemingly unfortunate girl was wounded. But this wound was left by a zombie bite, and within a couple minutes she had also turned. Sorry about what happened, but Jin had no other choice. In the entire hunt, the genie managed to get crystals. Too bad not every zombie has them. That's enough crystals for them to use the wheel twice. Now, the moment has come. Let's see what's in store for him. With all the crystals in place, the wheel began to turn. This moment is incredibly exciting. The disadvantage of this way of receiving awards is its unpredictability. Paying the same price, you can get everything, or you can get nothing. It all depends on luck. Unfortunately, Jin was out of luck this time. And instead of a potion, he got canned food. Faye, I was surprised that the wheel actually gave the banks, but Jin was upset about his winnings. Although in the apocalypse, banks are a valuable resource. Maybe it's not that bad, but the chance was already gone. But Faye saw a positive side to it. She promised to cook enough food to last them for a long time. Jin decided to give the remaining crystals to Faye, so she could try her luck. The girl was excited to spin the wheel. Future 9th star, Mu Faye. I wonder what she'll get as a reward. Maybe she'll be lucky at least. Jin watched curiously as Faye inserted the crystals into the receiver. There was clearly a connection between them. Every spin during the beginning of the apocalypse is very valuable. You can use it to quickly increase your fighting ability. The wheel finally stopped and their faces froze with wonder. What on earth had gotten into her? Whatever it was, it would still be better than Jin's. Faye, the elimination card has come up. An incredibly rare artifact, 1 in a million. This card was special in that it could remove one of the items from the wheel. Even if it's not really needed now, but it's very useful in the future, when they will need equipment or skills. This type of elimination card is simply a divine item that increases the chances of getting another item. Jin asked if Faye was always so lucky. The girl thought about it and said that no matter what game she participated in, she always won. And once she even won a real cow. Now it's clear how Faye will become the 9th star. She has the most important thing to survive in this world. And that's luck. Having learned about such incredible luck of Faye, the genie came up with a splendid plan to use her luck for his own purposes. The next morning, with the first rays of the sun, Jin was going to go hunting for as many crystals as possible. Jin leaves the screen because today he's going to get a whole crystals. He wants Faye to knock out as many good items as possible. because pretty soon, all hell is going to break loose. Faye didn't want to be left out. She wanted to help the genie with all her strength. So, without thinking twice, she decided to make a meal worthy of crystals, so that Jin would feel her support. A couple hours later, Jin came home all dirty and very tired. Came home and said he had 2 pieces of news, one good and one bad. I'm surprised there's good news during the apocalypse. Faye, already blurred at the mere sight of Jin, and said in a whisper, I want to hear the good news. The good news was that all the zombies were here besides them, and all the zombies near them had been killed by the genie. Faye couldn't wait to find out what the bad news was then. And the fact was that Jin had killed over 100 zombies, and got no more than 24 crystals. Faye exhaled with relief and said, God, you scared me so much. It's enough for a few rotations. What are you so worried about? But Jin wasn't worried. He was upset. After all, he had searched every house, every apartment, every point, killed so many zombies, and collected so few crystals. As suddenly Jin says, Listen, Faye, I'm really hungry. Is there anything to eat here? Faye, I tried my best, but half the food was already spoiled. Plus, she doesn't usually cook for herself. But the genie didn't give a damn. After all, he'd eaten better than that before. The Jinn said the dinner was excellent. She realized that her dinner had actually been disgusting. But even so, Jin thanked her. It left a huge imprint on her heart. Jin admitted that he once almost ate a dead dog because he was hungry. So the dinner that the fairies had prepared was a luxury for him. Well, now that he's had his fill, it's time to get down to the main business. And this time, Jin instructed Faye to spin the wheel. He believed that with her luck, they would get the best items, which were much needed. It's just amazing, Faye managed to get 2 useful weapons at once. Her luck is something incredible. They had crystals left for one more try. Faye suggested that the genie try his luck again. Jin refused as much as he could because he knew he'd get some nonsense. But Faye grabbed his hands and said, "Do it!" In this way, she wanted to instill a drop of hope in Gina. Faye believed that she had thus transferred a piece of her good fortune to the genie. They both felt it. Their hearts began to beat faster and harder, and their palms began to sweat. They began to fall in love with each other. Now, the chances of getting an improved gene cure have increased many times over. Because items cannot be dropped twice. Don't forget the elimination card, which Faye picked the first time. She suggested removing the box of cookies from the wheel. Faye touched the card to the wheel, and it started to vaporize, so the card was involved. That's a mistake. She spent the rarest card that can save a life on a box of cookies. Faye was afraid that Jin would kill her for wasting the relic like that, but Jin calmed her down and told her it was all right. Now has a 20% chance of getting enhancement gene medicine. You can't waste a chance like that. Faye didn't waste her card for nothing. Finally, they've got him. With it, Jin will be able to mine crystals dozens of times faster, and most importantly, he will be able to survive. Right now, the world doesn't seem so dangerous, but it's only a matter of time before it does. In the meantime, Jin and Faye are insanely happy to have finally gotten their hands on the potion. Their reward was a budding bodybuilding drug. It is able to significantly increase the consumer's physique and melee ability by at least 3 times. In a battle in the early stages of the apocalypse is incredibly important. As Faye suddenly asked, after you consume, your body will immediately become stronger, right? Well, it's not that simple. Before consuming this potion, Jin wants to show you something. And for this, he needs heparin, which he took from the hospital. By mixing the potion and heparin, you can double its volume, which means that instead of 1 portion, you can get 2 at once. Since there are many different wheels in this world, and they are all different. They may keep the remaining bottle to exchange for someone else's skill card or special medicine. To create the second potion requires a special temperature and brutal control. And the creation of the second potion, Jin entrusted to Faye. And then Faye asks again how Jin knows all this. But in response, he only asked him to be quiet. After all, it's crucial for a good result. As suddenly they heard an unfamiliar scream in the street. It was clearly not a human or even a zombie, but something much worse. Jin, without thinking long, grabbed Faye's hand and started running down the bride's direction. The main thing now was to get away from that monster. Running, Jin said, "Faye, shut your mouth. The scream you just heard is from mutated bugs. We can't handle them now. They're already here. These monsters are many times faster, stronger, and smarter than normal zombies. The only way to survive is to hide, and try not to give yourself away. The slightest rustle could get you killed." Mutated bedbug, after being infected with a virus, turned into a man-eating monster bug. It is not strong in close combat, but they move in groups, an army of them. Their main advantage is in numbers. They need to try to keep themselves as safe as possible. To do this, they crawled into a far room in the house and barricaded the door with a cupboard. Jin said that in addition to humans, animals and plants, and all living organisms had mutated, and all those who have mutated will try to eat the survivors. After all, their main food is humans. Bugs caught up with them. The scraping of their paws could drive you crazy. But luckily, as long as the door was locked, they were safe, and the monsters knew it. These bugs will stop at nothing to bite people. They would even sacrifice themselves just to take one bite. Faye was truly terrified. She pounced on the genie with shouts of what they should do and where they should run to. But Jin, he promised they'd be fine, and he'd sort it out. But for that to happen, she had to be safe. To do that, she needed to sneak into the next room unnoticed, while Jin would fight the bugs. Jin forcefully shoved Faye into another room and told her not to come out of it until he told her himself. Well, it was time to use the potion. Jin, with all his soul, didn't want to do that. First of all, it was incredibly rare, and secondly, its side effects could kill a person. Bugs getting closer and closer every second to breaking through their defenses and sneaking into the room. No choice. Whether he wants to or not, he has to drink this potion. The effects are unpredictable every time. That's what desperation leads to. Not knowing what's going to happen to him, Gina decides to drink the potion, once again putting her life on the line. When the potion took effect, Jin's heart began to beat 5 times faster. All the veins in his body began to protrude. The adrenaline surge made him gasp for air. Meanwhile, the beetles had already breached their defenses, and even managed to attack Jin. Finally, the potion worked. Even in a seemingly hopeless situation, the Jin easily broke through the beetle's hard skull. First thing he needs to do is get out of the monsters, so he can deal with each one in turn. Effect will not last long, but it should be long enough. The fact that his body is working at its limit makes it insanely hot, causing his blood to vaporize, and it hurts like crazy. But now is not the time to think about yourself. Now is the time to kill all the bugs and stay alive. We'll deal with the consequences later. A person who is under the influence of this potion is called Berserk, due to the fact that he becomes completely insane and out of control. Now, that's exactly what he needs. Madness and power. It's the only way he can win this battle. 195, that's it. The last beetle has been destroyed. No one can kill a whole pack of monster beetles alone. But he did. This time, the jeers went out with only a dozen beetles. But every pack has a queen, and the rest will follow. And Jin realized if he didn't kill their queen now, they would continue to stay. Suddenly, Jin heard something huge enter the room. He knew it was the queen, and he had a good chance of defeating her before the potion wore off. Unlike ordinary beetles, the queen can unleash a poison that when it hits the human body, eats away even the bones. Only the queen's goal was to avenge her dead children. She is even willing to give her life for it, thanks to the knowledge Jin had gained in his previous life. He knew the vulnerabilities of almost all monsters, and the Beetle Queen was no exception. Thanks to the still-active potion, the genie's machete easily penetrated the queen's thick armor. That's it! Another battle for the genie. And it's all thanks to the knowledge he earned in his previous life. One of the side effects of this potion is that the more he uses his powers, the more pain he feels, because more blood evaporates. Since the battle was over, Jin allowed Faye to leave the room. Seeing his emaciated body, Faye jumped on top of him and hugged him with all the strength she had, as suddenly she began to cry quietly, because she already loved him, and she was very scared that something might happen to him. Gina, you touched a lot, but during the apocalypse, the most undignified things are tears. Whatever happens, she must be prepared for anything. Faye didn't want to appear weak in the genie's eyes and said she was crying because the place stinks. And it was true. There was an unbearable odor in the room. But Jean was used to it. Now they have a huge number of beetle corpses, and they had to decide what to do with them. As suddenly Jean says, I realize my words may scare you now, but this will be our meal. Although, now they can still find enough food in abandoned houses and supermarkets. But in a year, and yes, it will become very rare. And because of the mutation, they can't grow any vegetables. In the future, food comes from 3 main sources. The first is leftover unused food, the second is the reward from the wheel, and the third is jerky from beetle corpses. Now it's not even 3 days since the apocalypse started. So it seems to Faye that food will always be there. There's more to come. Faye looked in horror at the remains of those beetles that were still moving. But she finally realized that there was no other choice, and she had to do it. Jin saw how hard it was for Faye to get over herself. So he decided to cheer her up and told her she was doing a great job. Seeing the genie had a backpack on his back, Faye asked where he was going to go. He would have to go much farther this time to get as many crystals and information about the environment as possible. When she heard that Jin was going to go to the monster-infested street again, Faye was very upset, though she tried to hide it. Before leaving, Jin promised that he wouldn't leave her alone in the world. He'd be back soon with more crystals. Exploring the immediate neighborhood, Jin doesn't notice anything out of the ordinary. Nothing but zombie pipes and the ruins of the city. Everything around me was exactly the same as it was in my last life, when suddenly Jin hears a woman screaming for help. He doesn't believe there are any survivors. Looking around the corner, he saw a girl sitting on her knees. She was the one screaming and begging for help. With her screams, she's sure to attract crowds of zombies, so they should get out of here as soon as possible. First thing, Jin covered her mouth and said, "Shut up already. I don't want to die because of you." But the zombies are here, and there are a lot of them. Fighting them would be foolish. Except Jin's out hunting, and it's a real treat for him to find so many zombies in one place. But even for him, they were too many. As it was, he could buy some time for the girl to escape. The time that Jin won her was just enough time to run to the nearest house and hide in it, making sure she was safe. Jin decided to make his own legs. As good as he was, now was not a good time to take that risk. A little more and the zombies would have grabbed him, but luckily it was all over. Fighting a mob of zombies, Jin had lost too much strength. But luckily now, he will have time to recover. And no, it won't. One of the zombies managed to stop the genie from closing the door at the last moment. Now they're trapped. The only thing left for them to do is just run. To run as fast and as far as possible. With each floor, the strength was getting less and less, and the zombies were getting closer and closer. Eventually, one of the monsters managed to grab the poor girl's leg. If he bites her, that's the end of it. But the genie, in time, notices it. He snatches the girl from the monster's grasp and decapitates him. You can see that 10 years of training have not been in vain. As much as Jin doesn't want to, it looks like he's going to have to fight a whole bunch of zombies after all. And he's got no margin for error. When suddenly, there was a terrible whistling sound and the whole sky shone. This could only mean one thing. That the first dungeon key has appeared. It's a rare occurrence. And it's a miracle to get it. Dungeon key. It is one of the rarest items in the world of Apocalypse. It is the only way to reach the mysterious land of dungeons filled with hope. In Jin's past life, even the high-ranking veterans were waiting for him, with hope. Seeing him this time, Jim was firmly determined that this key would be his, no matter what it cost him. But before he can go after him, Jin has to deal with the zombies who still want to eat him. Damn it! He's distracted for a second. The zombies ready to bite him, but they can't get to Jin that easily. He didn't come all this way to die from a zombie bite. There was one small advantage to the whole situation. The narrow staircase was quite convenient for defense. They wouldn't be able to take him by surprise, especially since there aren't that many zombies left. And Jin has more important things to do than crystals, so he'll be done with them pretty quickly. A little bit about this girl Jin saved. Her name is Chu Yin. Before the apocalypse, she had everything she wanted: fans, fame, money. But a few days ago, her life changed dramatically like everyone else's. She lost everything. Even her own father, who loved her more than he loved himself, wanted to kill her. In a moment, memories from her past life came flooding back to her. Remembering everything, she saw no point in moving on. So she sat on the floor and waited for her certain death. It was only Jin's shout that made her come to her senses. He said he didn't want her to die, so she should go higher. Chu couldn't believe her eyes. She couldn't understand how the genie could kill so many zombies by himself. Jin, acting like she wasn't even here. He cared about her, but if it was a choice between saving Chu or taking the dungeon key, he would choose the latter without a second thought. The only safe way out of this building was on the top floor. There was a bridge connecting the two buildings, but the door is overgrown with thick vines. At first glance, no big deal. But in the world of the apocalypse, even the plants want you dead. As suddenly, Liana grabbed the Chu. It looked like she wouldn't survive 5 minutes in this world without the Jin. This plant tried to tear poor Chu to pieces, and if nothing else, he succeeded. Jin had already regretted helping her times. If he hadn't had to help her, he would have been at the dungeon key by now. Once again, for the third time, Jin saves Chu. She clearly needs to tighten up her survival skills if she wants to survive on her own. Chu didn't know how to thank Jin for risking his life to save her. The only thing she could do now was kiss him. Oops, she left out one small point. Jean absolutely does not need this. In the years he's been in the apocalypse, his values have completely changed. Since the only way out of this building remains the door on the roof, the genie will have to cut his way out. He spends an insane amount of energy on nonsense. But there's no other choice. You want to live, do whatever it takes to make it possible. That's the motto Jean has lived by for the past years. As luck would have it, the matting plant wasn't the only obstacle in their way. The door was locked from the inside. But Jin had found a solution to that problem. Kicking down the door, Jean found a small group of survivors, who were hiding here from the zombies. The people on that roof were too scared. They didn't understand what had happened, why all the people around them had suddenly become crazy. They were afraid that because Jin broke the door down, a bunch of monsters would come here and kill them. But Jin, he said he took care of all of them, so they're safe here. Because the hinges on that door were broken. They can't close it, they can only block the entrance with it. The eyes of these people were filled with terror, fear, and fatigue. They were understandable, for it was the first time Jin had experienced the same thing. As suddenly, one of the survivors asked why they had come up here and where they were going. Jin said that he urgently needed to get to the high school on the other side. There were 2 ways to get to the school. One of them was to just walk through the streets. But because of the huge number of zombies, it was impossible to do that. Knew well. The second option was to jump from roof to roof. It was also quite dangerous, but the chances of survival were much greater. This guy told them that there was a platform on the school grounds that you could jump on, but it was incredibly dangerous. The opposite roof is 1 floor lower, and there is a distance of about meters between these buildings, so it is quite feasible to jump there. Jin knew that it was very dangerous and there was a chance that he would fail. But he couldn't pass up the opportunity to get the dungeon key, so he had to take the risk. When suddenly a Chu stops him and says she won't stay without him, and asks him to take her with him. Jin reluctantly, but still agreed to take her along, but on one condition, that she take the bag. When suddenly this guy comes into their conversation and suggests that they leave the bag with him, he realized how it sounded from the outside. And so he decided to explain that after they both jumped to that building, he would just drop them the bag. But Chu clearly didn't trust him, and rightly so. In this world, you can't trust anyone. Jean, highly displeased that they're wasting a lot of time on meaningless conversations. So, having made a little safety net out of improvised materials, they decide to jump. They need to get to school before night falls. Seconds before they were about to jump, this idiot with a baton started threatening Jin. He said that if Jin didn't give him the backpack, he would throw them off the roof. But Jin just laughed in his face, and he pushed off with all his might and jumped down. This act could be considered reckless and foolish, but the dungeon key was worth the risk. They successfully landed right on the edge of another building. Now that's nerves of steel. Jin saw that she almost died of fright. Out of politeness, he asked her how she was feeling, but she couldn't say a word. Their jump caught the attention of a group of survivors. For them, Jin became the #1 target. They didn't care about man or monster. They would kill you without a second thought. Unfortunately, Jin and Chu didn't make it to the school before sunset. Now they have to run from one corner to another, hoping the zombies won't notice them. If the genie had a lot of experience with stealth, Chu couldn't even move in fear. But the will to live was stronger than fear. So she obeyed all of Jin's orders unconditionally. In his 10 years in Apocalypse, Jin had learned to move as quietly and quickly as possible in total darkness. But Chu had a big problem with that. Besides the fact that she could barely see anything. Her enormous breasts made it hard for her to run fast. Jin realized he had acted foolishly in saving her. He had made a low-class mistake. Reckless. But he'd been bribed by her pretty face. On the way to the school, there were surprisingly too few zombies. This played right into their hands. They were able to get there undetected without much trouble. Jin was glad that they were able to get to school and not meet any monsters, but he was worried about where they all disappeared to. It was all about zombies breaking into the school, and now they are trying to get through one of the doors behind which a group of students are hiding. The students who escaped are trapped. Even if they are not eaten by zombies, they will starve to death. The air in the room was getting thinner by the second. The poor children had already given up hope of life, and some of them were already resigned to the fact that they would not live to see the dawn. But they had a ray of hope. The girl saw someone outside, and she started screaming for help. Their shouts could be heard even in the neighboring districts, but here Jin pretended not to hear them. At night, she couldn't just ignore the screams. She asked for Jin to help them. Suddenly he said, "Look, you can't even defend yourself, and I don't want to risk my life for someone else." What? She was very upset that she couldn't help those poor kids. After all, the only reason she survived was because of the genie. Now, over the screams of children, there's gonna be tons of zombies coming here. Jin and Chu need to get out of here as fast as possible. The nearest place they could hide. It was a school. As suddenly Chu asked, "Are we really going to leave those poor children just like that to die?" Jin realized that the children were blocked by the zombies, and their screams would attract more monsters. Especially he has no way to save these children. Everything around them reminded them that the world was now chaotic and violent, and death could be waiting for them around every corner. As suddenly, I wondered why they'd come to the school in the first place. Could it really be a place to hide from zombies? But she was afraid to ask about it. Instead, she decided to thank Jean for saving her earlier. As he suddenly says, "Thank you!" And that's it. Shouldn't you be more sincere? After all, I risked my life to save you. Chu, in a trembling voice, asked him what he wanted. Jin was going to use her as zombie bait, to get inside the school undetected. All this time he had been saving her for this. He didn't think she was valuable or beautiful. In the apocalypse, even a bag of macaroni would be more valuable than Chu. Of course, Chu didn't want to die. But she had already accepted that someone like her wouldn't last long in a world like this. Suddenly, Jin says, "You don't even know my name, so my name is Jin. And yes, I'm kidding. I'm not leaving you for the zombies to feed on." Oh shit. There were a lot more people in this school than Jin thought. Unfortunately, he wouldn't be able to save everyone, especially since Jin came here with the specific purpose of finding the key. And the people in that room could have seen where he fell, so he has to try to save those people before the zombies get to them. Luckily, in his former life, he used to climb walls a lot, but the zombies got there first. But for now, there's still a chance to save at least one of them, especially since the genie has the advantage, specifically the effect of surprise. With his first strike, Jin knocked out one of the zombies. It'll be easier now. There didn't turn out to be many zombies in this room, only 3. One Jin had already finished with, and the rest will be dealt with by his machete. Of the entire class, Jin only managed to save Teacher Pooh and her 2 students. Hopefully, they saw where the key fell. Otherwise, it was all for nothing. The poor teacher, she even lost her voice from fear. But still she begged Jin to take her and the girls out of the school. Jin agreed to do this, but in return he asked for ideas. And if it worked out, he would keep them safe. They couldn't believe their ears. Pooh thought that in return for saving them, Jin wanted to teach them a lesson. But he wasn't interested. Somehow all the girls he saves think about it. He asked them if they had seen where the light from heaven had fallen. The disciples sadly said they had not seen any light, but Miss Pooh saw where that light fell. But she made a condition that she wouldn't tell until after Jin got them out of school. Jin, surprised at such insolence, asked in surprise, "Are you going to condition me? What proof do you have that you saw it?" Pooh said that she heard a strange whistling sound, after which a ball of light appeared in the sky and fell somewhere in the school. But she didn't say where. She described everything quite accurately and even showed where the light was coming from. So her words convinced Jin. But Jin insisted first she told where exactly the light fell, and then he would lead them out. But Pooh asked for some assurances for her and her students. "Gina, that made me laugh so hard." He told them that there can be no guarantee of safety in this world. But they have a choice to either believe him or not and stay here to die. In a trembling voice, Pooh asked, "If I tell you, can we all really be saved?" But there are too many zombies in this building. Jin can't protect 3 at the same time. With his fighting ability, he at most can only take 2 people with him. Students started yelling at him and saying that he was an inhuman idiot, and that they made a deal that if they told him what he wanted, he'd take the 3 of them out. When will they realize that nothing in this world is reasonable or just? That only the strong survive and the weak die? Jin slowly pulls out his machetes and says, "Choose who will be saved." As expected, Pooh decided to sacrifice herself for the sake of her 2 students. Too bad she's going to die. When they'd made up their minds, Jin promised he'd get them out of here safely. But now she had to tell him where the light had fallen. But Pooh said she'd write where the light fell on a piece of paper, and she'll drop it after Jin brings out her students. 347, however, Jin agreed to these terms. As expected, this teacher turned out to be much smarter than she might have seemed at first glance. As Jin was about to leave, he heard someone walking outside the door. The footsteps were loud and slow, so with almost 100% certainty, Jin said, "There are no more than 3 zombies outside the door." Before leaving, Jin told Pooh to close the door after they left and barricade it as best she could and not make a sound. Well, it's time to finish off a couple of zombies. As soon as Jean opened the door, a zombie tried to climb in. The girls almost fainted from fear. Apparently, it's going to be hard to get them out of here, if the sight of a zombie makes them faint. But Jin was not hesitant to punch him with all his might. Having killed the first zombie, they began the evacuation. Every second counts now. If they stop even for a second, they will die. When Jin and his students ran away, Pooh closed the doors like Jin told her to. Only now she doesn't know what to do. Sooner or later, she'll die anyway if she stays here. Pooh, you gotta hand it to her. She was as scared as her students, but she hid it so as not to create more panic. And out of a sense of duty, she decided to sacrifice herself for the children. Meanwhile, the genie and his disciples were already near the stairs. They had only a short distance to go, and they would be safe. Of course there are too many zombies. Even a trained person like Jin finds it very difficult to fight them. But there's not much left. To the school exit, it's just a short walk. Just one floor down and a short hallway and they're finally outside. But then, Jin felt an intense fear. Or should I say terror. All his reflexes sharpened. He sensed a terrible threat ahead. Students, never ceasing to pester him with questions, why did they stop? But Jim couldn't even move in terror. Although up ahead there was nothing out of the ordinary. Just an empty hallway, not even a zombie in sight. Was Jin being let down by his own senses? But standing here, they're an easy target. So Gina decided to move on. Accepting his feelings as wrong? Weird. Except that in the 10 years Gene's been in Apocalypse, his senses have never failed him. This time too, only he doesn't know it yet. Right now they're just a toy for the monster. Monsters like this, very rare. They're incredibly stealthy, highly intelligent, and the ability to kill people in seconds. Meanwhile, Jin felt incredibly terrified again. He asked for absolute silence, to make sure they were not alone, when suddenly, Jin heard something moving on the ceiling. But when he looked up, he saw nothing. He still thinks his intuition failed him. Whatever it is, they need to get out of here as fast as they can. They went lower and lower. But the terror, now, was beginning to be felt by the students as well. Jin began to descend more slowly, peering around every corner. The feeling of fear grew stronger and stronger. It was amazing how such a huge monster could get to them silently. If Jin doesn't get those girls out of school safe and sound, Pooh won't tell him where the key fell. And yet, the monster still attacks the poor girl. There's no way Jin's gonna make it. But his reaction and wit worked quickly. Of course, throwing his only weapon at the monster was reckless. But at that moment, he had no other choice. Otherwise, the monster would have eaten her. But you can't say he was completely unsuccessful. Of course, ripping off his lip didn't kill him. But it pissed him off, that's for sure. This monster roared in pain like a pack of wild hyenas. It wasn't enough, because its scream would be met with a mob of zombies. Now, Jean was his main target, no matter how tough Jim was. But without a gun, he couldn't win. So he needs to get his machete back in a hurry, and try not to die in the process. Bold. Jin tried to knock out such a huge monster with his bare hands, and with all his might, he punched it right in the forehead. As expected, the effect was null, but it was still worth a try. When Jin got a better look at the monster, he remembered that he had seen one before. In past lives, they were called metal weapons. They dwelled in the farthest and most terrifying neighborhoods of the apocalypse. Why this time, it's in the heart of the city. It is also amazing that last time they appeared years after the beginning of the apocalypse. But this time, it's only 3 days later, though the worlds in his past life and this one are similar. There are still some differences. This world is much more dangerous. Meanwhile, Jin tried his best to stop the monster from eating himself. But all his attacks were to no avail. But the monster, on the other hand, had absolutely no trouble at all. Despite his enormous size, he grabbed Jin with ease. The enraged monster slammed Jin against the concrete floor with all his might. After that, it's a miracle Jin's alive at all. Not without a couple broken bones, of course. And one of his ribs punctured his lung. One of the students saw this and decided to immediately run back to her teacher's classroom. She thought it would be safer there, while leaving his best friend for certain death. That's what the apocalypse does to good people. They immediately forget all humanity. Meanwhile, Jin lay on the floor completely unconscious. If nothing happened now, Jin could be forgiven. As suddenly there was a loud and deafening explosion. It seemed to be no longer with us. And no, he's fine. Thank God he brought the gun Faye won him. He was on the verge of death. Of course, he won't survive another fight like this. He can barely walk with his broken ribs. Look who's back. That's real human nature. Throwing anyone away for their own personal gain. Before Jin could rest, as the floor below erupted a wild scream from the zombie crowd. Apparently the sound of his gunshot had attracted a lot of attention. Yeah, already, I don't need another mob of ravaged zombies. If they all come running in here, the genie won't be able to handle them in this state. About to go downstairs, Jin saw that there was some silhouette standing in the darkness. I think zombies here. Oh shit, it's Chu. Why did she come here? Gina's having such a hard time with these two, and then there's her. Suddenly, Chu started running at Jin like crazy. Was she really bitten? And then Chu jumped on Jin, hugged him, and started crying like a little girl. She obviously wasn't bitten, but why she came here is still unclear. And what's even more interesting is how she got through the zombie crowd. Chu said that she saw a crowd of zombies running like a madman into the training building. That's why she managed to get here unharmed. And then she mentioned that the zombies had fled to the training center for some obscure light source. But Jean knew that only one type of light source could attract zombies. And this is the light of the wheel of the apocalypse. Its glow is like a red rag to the zombies. They literally go crazy when they see it. Now in Jean's possession there are two objectives. The first is to get the key, and the second is to get a new tire. Chu couldn't help but notice that Jin had saved those two little girls. It melted her heart even more. Well, they're finally outside, as promised. Aside from the huge monster that almost killed him, things went pretty smoothly. Jin kept his end of the bargain, and Pooh made sure her students were safe. Now, it was her time to fulfill her part of the bargain. But for a second, a thought crossed her mind. If she didn't give the genie the paper, would he come and save her? But she quickly dismissed the thought. After all, the genie had kept his end of the bargain fair, especially since the students are still with him, and there is no telling what he will do if Pooh refuses to fulfill his end of the bargain. For 14, however, Gina considered her a great teacher. After all, she defended her students to the last. But Chu didn't understand if Jin thought she was a great teacher why he didn't save her then. Jean explained that she was trying to blackmail him, and so he decided to teach her a lesson. Don't condition someone who wants to save you. Now, the genie faces a new problem. There are two places he needs to get to. The first is the key to the dungeon at the construction site. The second is the shiny object Chu was talking about. There's a good chance it's the Wheel of the Apocalypse, but he won't be able to get to those two places in time. And first thing, Jin decides to check out the place Chu was talking about. The girl tries to stop him by saying that there are a lot of zombies there. But Gin, it was even more exciting. After all, if there's a bunch of zombies in there, it means there's something valuable in there. Since he could not leave the two girls, they decided to take them with them. All the more reason to take them with them. Like zombie bait. The entrance to the training wing was in the multimedia center. I'm surprised there wasn't a zombie at the entrance. Overhearing their conversation, the female students realized that Jin wanted to use them as zombie bait. They were much smarter than Chu. Of course, Jin wouldn't admit it, but that was exactly what he wanted to do. As suddenly Jean says, "And as for zombies, don't you get it yet? This is the apocalypse. There are zombies on every corner here, so stop whining. Try not to die." But at the last moment, Jean changed his mind. He decided to leave the girls on the street and go alone to the very heart of madness and death. Once inside, Jin was very wary. This building should be full of zombies, but it was silent. That she was incredibly worried about him. She didn't understand why he insisted on going there. By the way, the girl in the yellow dress is called Lily, and the other one is Chui. Chui considered Jin a psychopath. She didn't believe that with all of Jin's skills, he was able to choose to be free. To be honest, Chui was far from being the most conscientious person. She was willing to betray anyone just to survive. "Chui," suggested Lily, "hide somewhere private, while the zombies are tearing apart the genie and the Chu." But Lily, she couldn't do that to them. She felt obligated because the genie had saved them, that she suspected the girls were up to something. So she said she wouldn't let them out of her sight, until Jean got back. But Chui said they weren't up to anything. She was just sharing with her best friend that her stomach hurt. Of course, Chu didn't believe them. She let them go because she didn't care what happened to them. She was only worried about Jin, and the short time Chu and Jin had spent together. She has already fallen in love with him, so she trusts his every word. Well, in the meantime, Jean had arrived at the site. He was insanely lucky that there were no mutant zombies, which are a huge danger. Anyway, after a battle with an iron weapon, Jin has a couple broken ribs and his shoulder is dislocated. So this battle can't be called an easy one. As luck would have it, Right now his shoulder was starting to hurt like crazy. With an injury like that, of course you can fight, but it's crazy. He had often had bones set in his past life, but it still hurt like crazy every time. So shoulder in place, machete in hand, zombies ahead. It's time to try your luck again. Will be interesting to watch. Now we'll find out if years of grueling training hasn't gone to waste. And this time, Gene decided to arm himself not only with machete, but also with a gun. Now we can begin. Hearing the sound of the shot, Chu Strong was frightened. After all, after it, there was complete silence. Lily and Chui heard the shot too. They thought that if Jin used a gun, it meant he was finished. Chui suggested that Lily hide in the teacher's dormitory. She figured it was the safest place to be right now. Except Lily hasn't forgotten how Chui left her for dead. And Jin almost died because of her. Lily decided to go back for Chu and tell her the truth. Lily started urging Chu to go with them, until the zombies attacked them. Lily told them that there was a teacher's dormitory nearby that was the safest place to be. So, you've made up your mind. She said she's not going anywhere without Jin. And I asked her a question. How long do you think we can last without Jin? According to Chu, Jin is incredibly strong, and in the current situation, leaving him would mean death. And she will do anything to stay by his side. And then Lily told me that Jin almost died. And how can a man like that protect someone if he can't protect himself? And meanwhile, while I had the girls scratching their tongues, Jin had already finished off all the zombies in the basement, and Jin's hunch was realized. He knew from the start that this was a tricky wheel. In his previous life, he'd never seen one like this, the three-colored wheel of the apocalypse. When the apocalypse comes, there are still wheels such as the lifeline. And apocalypse wheels, besides the regular ones from rank to rank 9, there are also special ones. For example, a wheel that has 3 colors is known as a tricolor wheel. Of course, there are also mixed wheels with 5, 7, and even 9 colors, all of which are known as color wheels. Unlike rank wheels, the more you spin the wheel, the more chance you have of gaining professional skills. For example, a warrior skill, assassin skill, or even a ranger skill. There are also auxiliary skills such as doctor, alchemist, cook, and the like. Only when you manage to get the profession skill, you will be able to get the highest profit. And if you combine several professions, you can become an invincible warrior. These wheels have a huge advantage over conventional wheels. But there's also a huge disadvantage. If the spin hits the black area, the wheel explodes like a bomb. Except the wheel that Jin found has a profession icon in the black area, so it shouldn't explode. Wonders, could it be that an unlucky guy like Jin would smile at good fortune? Maybe Faye really did pass on a piece of luck to him. But either way, until he tries it, he won't know. Meanwhile, Lily is still trying to convince Chu to go with them. After all, the chances of Jin surviving are slim to none. As she suddenly said, "I'm not going with you. And I'm not going to talk you out of it either. If you want to go, I recommend that you keep as quiet as possible so as not to attract the zombies' attention." But then Chui comes in and says that Jin has attracted the attention of all the zombies and lured them into the basement, so it's obviously safer outside than inside. Chui, I couldn't take it anymore. I grabbed Lily's hand and said, "Stop taking that fool's word for it. He's long since gone to zombie fodder. Let's get out of here before it's too late." Wow, that's unexpected. But honestly, it's Chui-sama's fault for that. She shouldn't have said those words about her savior. And in front of someone who cared about him. After that, Lily and Chui decided to run away after all. And there's that man again. He's like a vulture, circling over our heads waiting for the right moment to attack. He's the leader of a gang called the Brothers. In normal life, real thugs. When he noticed that Chu was left all alone, ordered his thugs to go downstairs and bring her to him. Meanwhile, Lily and Chui came across a truck. There were some strange, creepy noises coming from it. At first, the girls thought they were imagining things, when suddenly she heard a woman screaming from the alley where the schoolgirls had gone. She'd warned them. Oh shit, the brothers really decided to steal it. Chu was very scared, but did not scream to avoid attracting zombies. Suddenly she asked, "Do you know who you're messing with? Jin will be back and you'll regret what you did." But the bandits only laughed in her face and said, "How foolish you are. That man is long dead. And you still count on him?" For some reason, the bandits' words seemed true, and she believed Jin was dead. Meanwhile, Jin was collecting crystals to turn the wheel for once. But it took too long to collect each crystal one by one. Amazingly, Lily and Chui are still alive. They're desperately fighting for their lives, running away from a single zombie. After only a few meters, Chui stumbles and falls. If Lily doesn't help her, it's over. Due to her soft and kind nature, Lily could not leave her only friend to just die like that. Oh crap! Chewie just pushed Lily right into Zombie's arms. Only a moral freak would do that. After sacrificing her best friend, Chewie still managed to get away from the zombies, but at great cost. Proving once again that you can't trust anyone, not even your best friend. Running out into the light, Chewie saw the bandits carrying that to an unknown destination. The bandits could already taste the sweet taste of her soft lips. If it weren't for the zombies, they were ready to enjoy her right now. But then one of the brothers noticed Chewie nearby. Naturally, he wanted to take her with him to receive praise from his elder. Chewie was trapped. On one side, a bandit wanted to steal her, and on the other, a bloodthirsty zombie was waiting for her in an alley. Because of that, Chewie had a chance to get free. And she took it by biting one of the brothers on the arm. She ran headlong towards the center, hoping Jin would save her. But the bandit was faster than the Chew, and he caught her very quickly. Falling to the ground, Chew only kept repeating Jin's name. The bandit laughingly says, "So who's your Jin anyway?" As suddenly, a machete plunges straight into the bandit's hand. Out of the darkness, a voice is heard saying, "Who is Gino? He is your death tonight." A little more time and Jin wouldn't make it, but thanks to Chewie, Chew was able to buy enough time. When she saw Jin, Chew cried with happiness. She thought he was already dead. All love affairs will have to be put on hold for a while. Jean still has unfinished business with that womanizer. Thug tried to intimidate Genie with his big brother, but the genie doesn't give a damn. He's been through too much to be afraid of anyone. Jin, even without machete, he could easily take out that idiot. They're just saying they're so tough. Already wants to see his brother's face. When he sees him, after dealing with the bandit, Jin notices that the other two girls have disappeared. He asks Chew where they went. She told him the whole story, and that they were now somewhere in the alley. Jean wasn't too happy about the news, but he decided to go after them. In the alley, all Jin found was Chewie. She was sitting on the floor saying, "I'm sorry, Lily," finding Lily's breathless body. Jin couldn't take it anymore and started yelling, "I didn't save you guys for this. Who asked you to come here?" Jean had a little unresolved question. What to do about the two bandits who tried to kidnap Chew, but the best punishment for them would be to leave them for zombie fodder, so they don't get blood on their hands. Jin told the girls to temporarily hide in the media center, because that's the safest place for now. Chewie couldn't believe her ears. Now she understood why Chewie trusted him so much. After all, he was able to take down a whole squad of zombies by himself. Before leaving, Jin said he had to go back and get someone. The girls were very surprised to hear this. Did Jin really? Decided to come back and save her. Looks like he liked her after all. Meanwhile, Pooh was sitting in her office. Suddenly there was a loud and deafening knock on the door. Girl thought it was the end of her, that the zombies had found her. She didn't want to die at the hands of zombies, because she realized she wasn't going to survive here anyway. She decided to take drastic measures. Anything is better than being eaten. The rattle of the door growing stronger and stronger, convincing her of the rightness of her actions. She hesitated for a long time whether to do it or not. But with all her will in her fist, she decides to do it, especially since the door had already been broken down. But unexpectedly for her, it wasn't a pack of hungry zombies outside the door. Pooh couldn't believe her eyes. She was so happy that Jin had come to save her, because she thought he was a selfish idiot who only thought of himself. He's a selfish idiot who only thinks about himself. She pounced on Gina with tears in her eyes. Through her tears she said, "I thought it was a zombie, but you're saving me. I'll do anything you say." Jin was even a little embarrassed by this reaction. Blushing, he said, "We'll deal with this later. I'll get you out of here first." Meanwhile, Chu and Chui decided not to waste time and collect as many crystals as they could. They didn't understand what they were for, but according to Jin, they were very important. Well, Jin saved everyone he could, and Pooh was reunited with her students again, or rather, one of them. It's so touching to see someone who still has feelings for people, not rotten in this horrible world. Looking around, Pooh asked, "Where's Lily? Why don't I see her? Is she okay?" Hearing just her name, Chui started to get hysterical. Pooh understood perfectly well. She tried to calm her student down and tell her that it wasn't her fault. But then Chu comes into their conversation and says, "That's nonsense. If they had believed the genie and not left in person, they wouldn't have met Zombie, or Lily would still be alive." Only Chui didn't agree. She thought that if Jin had saved all three of them at once, it wouldn't have happened, and blamed Lily's death on Jin and Chui. It's amazing. How can you be so ungrateful to the people who have saved you twice already? Suddenly, Chui accused Jin of wanting to kill them. What a freak. Finally, she got what she deserved. Jin couldn't take it anymore with Brad, and punched Chui right in the face to calm her down. And then he said, "Before you speak, think. I saved you, but that doesn't mean I can't send you back. This world full of zombies, who knows what we'll face? Taking one extra person with us means extra risk, so appreciate it." No matter how much Pooh disliked her student. But even she recognized that they should be grateful to the genie for saving them, even though he didn't have to. Chu was pleased that at least her teacher understood that. As suddenly Chu asked Jin, why did he ask them to collect all those crystals? But he decided to smile and said to follow him. And Jin led them straight to the wheel. He asked them to give him all the crystals they had collected. Chu even got a little excited when she saw the wheel. It struck her with its brilliance. She immediately realized that she needed the crystals to use the wheel. Colored wheels have another big difference from regular wheels. They don't calculate the number of crystals. It's the amount of energy that matters to this wheel. They only managed to get rank 1 crystals. Jin prayed to all the gods that it was enough for 1 rotation. Good, the wheel's starting to turn. That means Jin didn't come all this way for nothing. And then, the wheel stopped, but in the red zone. As a rule, professions with high combat power are located in the red section. Well, it was time to see what profession Jin had found. His heart was jumping out of his chest with excitement. That's bad luck. Jin got a profession as a glorified craftsman, and his professional level is 0. Of the colored wheels can be used to gain a main profession and a support profession. While support professions cannot directly increase combat abilities, and craftsmen are just the supporting type. Professions are categorized into 4 ranks: trainee, novice, intermediate, and advanced. In other words, Jin got the worst of the best. He got the worst profession with the worst rank he could get. The girls waited impatiently to see what was in store for him after all. And Jin silently just handed them a scroll of paper. Along with his profession, Jin was also given a badge of some kind. And there was something about it that confused Jin. It was not like the ones he had seen in his previous life. Read the note. The girls remarked that it was like a computer game. As suddenly Chu asks, "Jin, what do you mean embedding magic techniques, 5 types in all?" Hearing this, Jin became very nervous and said, "Did you say from 5 types? Let me see it again." Now everything was falling into place. That's why the badge had 5 colors, indicating each type of magic. Looks like his luck has run out after all. There were still a lot of zombie corpses left in this place. Jin told the girls to collect all the remaining crystals and spin the wheel too. If they each do this, they will all have unique professions and abilities. Tirelessly, they began to collect as many zombies as they could, to get all the crystals they could. 558, meanwhile, the leader of the gang of brothers, was still watching them. He'd seen the genie single-handedly take out a whole crowd of zombies. The only thing he didn't understand was why they were dragging around the breathless bodies of zombies. And then he noticed that some of the zombies they had dragged were without crystals in their heads. When he saw that, he immediately realized it. Bandits have ordered an emergency meeting, because they have a job to do. If the brothers get their hands on the unique abilities, it will be a huge problem. With unique abilities, his gang will become even more of a danger than the monsters. Meanwhile, in the media center, Jin and the girls rounded up all the remaining zombies to get the crystals. They had spent all their energy on this, plus Chu hadn't eaten in over 3 days. The rumbling of her belly made the others very uneasy. Jin decided to give up his last of his supplies so that Chu could gain a little strength. They still had a long road ahead of them. Jin tested premise, and drinking found water in the restroom. It also means that the school's water tank has not been destroyed. Jin took off his backpack and said, "There's supplies for 3 more days here, and some medicine. Help me keep them safe." Chu was incredibly moved that the genie had entrusted her with such an important mission, because if she failed, they would all starve to death. This backpack is the most valuable thing you can have during the apocalypse. It's a life-saving treasure. What? Was visibly nervous about such an important mission. But Jin reassured her and said he trusted her. That gave her hope. Well, at least from Jin said, "Now the media center is our sanctuary while I'm gone. You should try to get as many crystals as you can." Jin didn't want to take them with him for one reason only, because they would interfere with his search for the key. For defense, Jin left them a spear made from a stick using his artisan ability. Zombies are a suitable weapon. Leaving, Jin said that they should learn to protect themselves. After all, he wouldn't always be around. Pooh, encouraged by this thought, shouted out, "You are right! It is time for us to learn how to protect ourselves. But Choi didn't realize that the world that was before no longer existed. That now they would have to fight for their lives every day. And rely only on their own strength. Enough of all this stupid talk. It's time to finally get that damn key. Good can be oddly enough on his way. Jin didn't encounter any monsters. You'd think there'd be zombies swarming near the key. But for some reason there aren't any. But that's even better. Jin doesn't waste his energy killing monsters. There's no telling what lies ahead. There it is! Instead of building a new school building. The place where the key to the dungeon fell. There was complete silence all around. Not even birdsong could be heard. It was a little alarming. When suddenly, something falls on top of Jean. Could it be another monster? And no, it's a beautiful diva, but where did she even come from? And what is she doing here? Oh shit. Another crazy person. Why half the people Jin saves want to kill him. But you have to admit, her skills are top-notch. What if she came for the key too? Then Jean would have to kill her. But first we have to free ourselves, and then we have to figure this out. The genie managed to break free from her grasp. He grabbed her by the neck and held her against the wall, asking her who she was and why she had come here. The girl just said she was police. When Jin heard that, he let her go at once. The police are an organization that protected the safety of the people on a daily basis before the apocalypse began, and continued to do so during it. Having figured it all out, the girl praised Jin for his instant reaction. She asked him if he had ever practiced martial arts before. And then Jin blabbed that in his previous life, he had practiced for 10 years every day. The girl didn't know what he meant, as suddenly Jin shouted, "Get down!" He sensed danger before the shots were even fired. This time they miraculously escaped, all thanks to Jin's impeccable reflexes. And then the girl says, "You were wondering what I was doing here, so I was hiding from them." But Jin didn't understand why anyone would want to kill a cop. But it was much simpler than that. She was going to be killed by criminals who had escaped from prison during the apocalypse. In a past life, there was a small group of people who roamed the streets freely and killed everyone without a second thought, and all the members of this group were prisoners, ignorant of order. If that's the case, why should Jean feel sorry for them? Except there's one problem. They're armed with police weapons. Only the bandits didn't take into account that Jin is also armed with a gun, and this game can be played together. Suddenly one of them felt a terrible pain in his chest. He caught a bullet. Jin seized the moment and escaped with the girl. Now it was only a matter of time. Finish off the other two. The bandits tried for a long time to find Jin, but he found them first. More than zombies and other monsters, Jin only hated people who didn't know measure. In a world where laws and rules no longer exist, such people are the greatest danger, and Jin vowed to exterminate every last one of them. And in this endeavor, he found a loyal assistant, who had spent her whole life cleaning up the streets of evil. 605. The two of them easily defeated these idiots. But unfortunately, they're not the only ones. When the last bandit realized that he could not win, he knelt down and begged for mercy. The girl was ready to let him go. But not Jin. He fired the rest of his clip at the bandit. Such an act was completely contrary to all of this girl's life principles. After Jin killed him, she asked why Jin did it since he had already surrendered. Jean, already fed up with these constantly crazy screaming girls who didn't realize where they'd gotten to. So he just ignored her question. The girl insisted the Jeep answer why he did it. Why he killed the surrendered man. Jin couldn't stand it and said, "Isn't he a prisoner? I'm only doing what you cops can't do, killing gangsters. Or do you think he'll start a new life after you let him go? If so, you're a naive fool. You know very well that now that there are no restrictions, such people will continue to rob and kill." Gina told her the story of how in his past life, his ex-girlfriend Bai Shui was used and killed by people like them. The girl would not argue with him. But now she wondered what he had gone through to become so heartless and cold-blooded. 616, however, she was grateful to him for saving her from certain death. Meanwhile, there was real panic in the brothers' camp, for 2 members of their gang had been killed by a genie. Older brother felt the genie to be a major threat to himself and his gang, so he decided to kill him personally. All the more he realized that if Gin was gone, all the girls and the weapons they had would be his. For this purpose, the elder brother called a general meeting, at which he told them that 2 members of their gang had died at the hands of an unknown person, and now they must avenge them and rip the genie's head off. In the past, they've done everything secretly for fear of being caught, but now that there are zombies roaming the streets, no one can stop them or forbid them to do anything. He has declared them kings of the street. His speech boosted the morale of his gang. There's no way they can take on the genie. Looks like he's gonna have to kill them all. Meanwhile, Jin spent the whole day looking for this key. At one point, he even gave up hope of finding it, but he was sure this key was here. Suddenly, the girl asks him, "Look, I understand everything, but what does this key look like?" That was a good question. But Ji had never seen it before, so he doesn't know what he looks like. But soon it will be dark and the key will be easier to find. For it emits a strong and bright light, when suddenly there was a shout. "I found it!" Finally, it was time to see what Jin had worked so hard for. What? That's the legendary dungeon key? Although this key was indeed unique, Jin decided that it was clearly not the right key for him. Well, that's too bad. But the search must continue, no matter what it takes. I think the search for the key will have to be postponed for a while. After all, they're not the only ones here, no matter how strong Jin was. But he had no desire to fight a mutant dog. But if Jin really wants that key, he has no choice but to kill the mutant. Another reason why Jin didn't want to fight this monster was that it was a second-rank mutant dog, unknown for their incredible speed and endurance. And their horns are so sharp that they can even pierce through bone. That monster managed to take Jin by surprise. Is this really the end? Jin, there's no way in hell he'd be able to react to an attack like that. What? She didn't kill Jin. It even seems like she's trying to befriend him. There's obviously something wrong with this mutant dog. But once he got a better look at this dog, Jin realized everything. It had a distinctive tail with a white spot on the end. An avalanche of memories from his past life, before the apocalypse began. Years ago, 5 years before the apocalypse began, when Jin was just a high school student. He found on the street a stray puppy trying to steal his sandwich for a little snack. Hated him. All the cafe owners around here, because he was always trying to steal something from their kitchen. Everyone treated him like garbage. Well then, Jin was just a simple schoolboy who knew what love and kindness were. Seeing how the other people were treating the poor puppy, Gina decided to save the little puppy, to take him home. He couldn't, but he could stop other people from killing him. And that day, Jin became this puppy's first and only friend. The best thing he could do for him then was to just feed him. As much as Jin didn't want to, he couldn't take the dog home. Because his family lived very poorly, and even he didn't always have enough to eat. Even so, Jin brought him a little food every day and played with him. He even named him Yoke. Surprised that after so many years and a severe mutation, Yoke recognized Jin. As suddenly the girl asked Jin why he gave such a strange name to his dog. The thing is, when Jin found it, it looked like a little yellow ball. That's why he called it a Yoke. Meow's heart melted when she saw Yoke and Jin playing like little children. She saw love and warmth in him. Meanwhile, Chu, Poo, and Chui had already collected all the crystals from all the zombies, and decided to have a little snack. Chui was not happy that Chu gave them only dry cookies, although there are cans of meat in the bag. As suddenly Chui tried to snatch the bag from Chu's hands, and said, "If you don't let me take it, I'll take it myself." Well, Chu wasn't going to give up so easily. After all, Jin had assigned her to guard this bag, and she couldn't let him down. And only Pooh was able to calm the unstable girl down, saying that it's not a good time to fight over food. It's best to distribute it wisely. After that incident, Chui had become convinced that Chui was an incredibly arrogant and vicious bitch. But what did she expect from a man who'd abandoned his best friend to his death? Meanwhile, Jin and Meow continued their search for the very key, as suddenly Jin sneezed. Meow was worried that Jin had a cold because they didn't have any medicine, but Jin laughed and said, "Don't worry. Someone must be missing me." The three of them continued their search diligently. With each passing minute, there was less and less hope. Jin was so dazzled by this key that he completely forgot about the dangers that haunted him in the night. As suddenly, amidst a breast of stones, Jin noticed an unusual glow. He began to rake the rocks with maddening speed. At last, Jin had found the key. He was insanely happy about it because now the door to the amazing dungeon would open to him. They were so excited about finding the key, they didn't notice the huge lizard coming up behind them. First things first, Monster decided to take a bite of the juicy Meow. One more second, and Jin's help wouldn't have been needed. But this time, something was different. His machete left a strange blue trail in the air. It's all about Jin's artisan enhancement, thereby increasing the combat effectiveness of his machete by many times. Luckily, but he was able to do it before the fight. Without this enhancement, he would never have been able to cut off the tongue of such a large monster in one blow. Yoke also did not stay away. He bit the monster's paw with all his might, thereby distracting the monster and buying some time for the genie. And Jin didn't miss the opportunity to attack. With his machete, he knocked out one of the lizard's eyes. Fighting such a huge monster, Jin used up all his stamina too quickly. Then a brilliant idea came to him. His plan was to get the lizard as close to him as possible and jump on his back, plunging his machete into his neck. Except that the Yoke didn't know it. He sensed the danger to his master and came to the rescue. Yoke did not wait for the lizard to attack. He decided to attack it first. Amazingly, even after mutation, the dog remains a good friend of man. 680, he still has one advantage over the lizard, and that's his incredible speed and agility. Thanks to it, he could easily dodge the lizard's attacks, and even had time to attack. His teeth couldn't hurt it much. In the end, the lizard still managed to cast the Yoke. From such a blow, the Yoke's front leg was broken, so he lost his main advantage in speed, even though there was a significant fracture to get up and ready to fight on. But the lizard wasn't going to stop there. He was going to kill him. When Jin saw this, he immediately ran to help. He couldn't leave his only friend in trouble. Yoke, the only one Jin saved unselfishly. The monster's attention had completely shifted to Jin. Now he could use some help. Wow, did Meow really have the strength to drive iron rods into the lizard's hard skull? Was indeed enough. Now I think they're even. Jin saved her once and Meow saved him once. Now we can breathe a sigh of relief. Suddenly Jin said, "Meow, thank you. As expected from a policeman, you are incredibly brave." At that moment, a spark ran between them. Meow felt how suddenly she felt hot and wet, and the genie felt cramped, since the monster has already been defeated. It was time to collect the spoils. During the battle, Jin noticed something. Showing the crystal, Jin explained to Meow that in this world, it was the most precious resource. Meow asks in amazement, "Magic crystal? That's how magic exists in this world." Wait, if there are magic crystals, they're for something, aren't they? Jim was pleasantly surprised that Meow was settling in so quickly. He promised to tell her what the crystals were, for only if she agreed to one of his conditions. Unexpectedly, but Meow refuses. She said she could investigate and find out what the crystals were for. Jin didn't expect that answer, but now he knows that not all girls are the same. When suddenly Meow says, "Well, you found your key, I guess we can part ways now." But Jin stops her and offers to work together. After all, they make a good duo. I don't think the other girls will like it much. But after thinking about it for a while, Meow agreed. 702, especially since she has a lot of hidden talents in addition to her huge breasts. She's the only one who could save Jean at least once. But then two thugs come running at them, threatening them with a knife. Looks like someone's had enough, as suddenly, right out of the ground, they are attacked by a Yoke. This is something they clearly did not expect. I wonder if a bite of egg yolk can turn you into a zombie. I guess we're about to find out. Meanwhile, Meow decided not to miss the moment and take advantage of the surprise effect, and attack the bandit from behind. I wonder if she's trying to let the gangsters go this time. Or is she going to see it through to the end? Looks like she's serious this time. Apparently she's realized that this world can't allow the spread of such evil things as them. After seeing Meow scatter the bandits left and right, Jin thought that in the future he shouldn't piss her off. I already want to see Chewie get mean to her. Trying to save their skins, the bandits told me that they didn't want to touch Jin. It was all Big Brother's idea. Well, Jin had no idea who this Big Brother was. So he said if the bandits don't want to die, they should hurry up and tell everything. Meanwhile, Big Brother came to the corridor of the media complex to collect the remaining crystals. He did not yet understand exactly what these crystals were for, but he was sure they were of great value. Pooh, Chui, and Chu, meanwhile, lay on the upper floor in the office and tried to get some sleep, to regain their strength. Except that Chui couldn't sleep because of a terrible stomach ache, because she hadn't eaten in over 3 days. When she opened her eyes, she saw that Chu was flying carefree in her dreams. And that's when she came up with a cunning plan. She was gonna kill Chu, take the backpack and eat all the food. What a selfish and reckless fool she is. Standing over the sleeping Chu, she said, "You use the name Gina to pressure me. Every time you try to humiliate me by acting arrogant. And for that, in exchange for a lifetime." But then Pooh wakes up and asks why she's awake. She got confused and said she woke up because she had to go to the bathroom. No need to worry. But Pooh felt something strange was going on. She knew Chui was deceiving her, but she didn't know what it was yet. Chui went down a couple floors, to be alone. She didn't understand why her favorite teacher was such a simpleton and trusted some unknown guy who'd only saved her once. Chui was convinced that she had to get the resources at any cost, even if she had to kill someone. As suddenly her solitude was interrupted by the terrible rattle of a metal door. Hearing this rumbling, Chui immediately went back. But the same thing was happening in their room when the doors opened. The girls breathed out a sigh of relief that it wasn't a zombie, but they didn't know what lay ahead of them yet. Shui, as usual, sensed the slightest danger and ran away, leaving Shui and Pooh alone with those bandits. Ms. Pooh, grabbed by her former student, who had a lifelong desire to be alone with her. Chu was captured by one of the gang leaders, and their entire self-defense plan failed. Meanwhile, Jin and Miao couldn't make up their minds what to do about the bandits who tried to kill them, so they decided to leave them to their fate. But Jin couldn't let it go that some obscure idiot was trying to kill him, and he resolved to come to him in person, not to tear off his head. But Miao, you couldn't put him in one, especially since you know someone wants to kill him. So I decided to go with him. How suddenly, Miao asked. Look, Jin, I understand everything. But why did we spend so much time looking for this key? How can we use it? But Jin only smiled and said, all in good time. Wait a little longer. This time, Chui wouldn't be able to just walk away from her problems. Karma has caught up with her. The thug who grabbed her turned out to be just a guy who was constantly shunned and abandoned by everyone, trying to save my life. That's what I said about her being different. She'll love him. There's no way she's gonna leave him. When suddenly this giant said, I like you very much, but I can't betray my big brother. So I'll take you to him. But I promise I won't let you die. But the short period that Shui was in the apocalypse, she learned one rule. Always carry a weapon. Shui realized that she would have to get her hands dirty in blood anyway, but she would be willing to do that for the sake of survival. Well, when she saw Mrs. Poe lying unconscious on the floor, all battered and used, she was horrified, but you gotta hand it to the missus. She tried her best to fight those bandits. She even managed to bite one of them on the lip. To keep Chui safe, the giant said she wanted to join their gang. But to prove it, she has to pass one simple test. All she needs to do is beat up Chu. Until a couple of hours ago, she was gonna kill her, so it won't be a big problem for her. Immediately, the Chui began the task. She beat the Chu with unbelievable fury and bloodthirstiness with all her might. With each blow, Chui became more and more like those thugs. Apparently, she did betray them. She joined the bandits of her own free will. After beating her to the point of semi-fainting, Chui began to scream. I'm so sick of you. Your infuriating face is disgusting. When suddenly the gang leader shouted, Hey, enough already. You're fit to join us. Now, Chui is one of a gang of brothers, and the giant is her handler. Must see to it that she doesn't cause any unnecessary trouble. This gray-haired man's name is Don, and he's one of the heads of the gang. Except he didn't fully trust his older brother. He believed that since the apocalypse had come to the world, everything would have to change, including the leadership of the gang. Don, along with his goons, decided to stage a revolution within the gang and overthrow the big brother. Laughing, he said, Elder brother, today is a fine day for your death. Bandits started looking for Big Brother all over the media center, and by happy coincidence, they stumbled upon a genie and a Meow, who were having lunch after a hard day's work. When suddenly the bandit shouted, Who the fuck are you? Get out of here before I rip your head off. It seems that the supper Jin is finished. In a calm and monotone voice, Jin said, You don't know who I am. Weren't you the one who wanted to kill me? Don, wary when he heard this. He couldn't believe that this flimsy-looking fellow could put down two of his best soldiers. But in this conversation, Don had trump. He realized that Jin was incredibly strong, and there was no point in fighting him. Instead, he decided to make a deal. Don wanted to trade Chu for the right to live, because Don saw Chu and Jin walking together and talking. He thought she was very important to him, when suddenly, Jin interrupted him and said, You're talking nonsense. I only want it for carnal pleasure. I'll trade you for a pack of cookies. Of course, it was all a lie, and Jin only said it to divert the enemy's attention. Wounding Don, Jin managed to wrestle the Chu out of his hands. Now, he doesn't have any trump cards, so we can just finish him off. Jin ordered Meow to take care of Chu while he dealt with those bandits. Still, Jin is a very strange man. His words and actions are often different. The first time we met, Jin wanted to feed Chu to the zombies, and now he'd tear anyone apart for her. Sooner or later, he'll have to choose which girl to stay with. Bandit even managed to round up Jin, but it only made him laugh. But at least it would be more fun that way, Jin added. Some of the bandits even tried to attack him. Of course, all of this brought absolutely no result. To the genie, it's even getting boring just beating up these assholes. As suddenly, one of the bandits managed to catch Jin off guard. Well, it was reckless of him, attacking Jin alone. Do they still think they can beat him? Well, that's it. Most of you are done. Just 3 more to go. I don't think that's going to be much of a problem for the genie. And this is interesting. Jin has decided to confront Chui's handler. I wonder what Jin's face will look like when he finds out. Funny, it's Fatty used the same weapon as Jin, 800. But Jin didn't take the fun out of it and hit him first, right in the liver. Because of Fatty's layer of fat, Jin's punch did absolutely no harm to Fatty. The Fatty even tried to resist the genie. It didn't last long. No one's ever survived a blow to the head, and it was Fat Man who was the exception. The second thug started begging Jin for mercy, saying he didn't mean to touch him. Fight is not over yet. Don grabbed Pooh and put a knife to her neck. He threatened that if Jin didn't get on his knees and beg for mercy, he wouldn't hesitate to kill Pooh. Earlier, Don hadn't touched the PU for this moment. He was waiting for Jin to come after her, as Jin suddenly said, "Do what you want with her. I don't give a damn. I saved her for my own profit. I don't need her now." But Don, not stupid enough to believe it, but he was amused by the way Jin was trying to pretend he didn't care about these girls. Unexpected. But Chui's humanity had finally awakened. She couldn't let her teacher die after doing something for her, and she paid for it in full. Karma finally caught up with her. To poor Lily, Chui was a terrible person, and all of her actions before had led to this. Jin couldn't miss such a perfect moment to knock out the bandit. I wonder when it will dawn on them that this will be the case with anyone who dares to challenge the genie, holding the cold body of his student in his arms. Pooh asked Jin why he didn't fulfill the bandit's conditions. After all, then everyone would be alive. Angry, Jin said, "Let's start with the fact that you're all alive because of me. It's not my fault she died of her own stupidity." Although Pooh understood everything perfectly well, but Chui was her student. She had known her since she was a child. "Really, you don't care about her death at all? How can you be so cold-blooded?" Pooh asked Jin. Only Chu understood how hard it was for Miss Pooh. She too had lost all the people she cared about during the apocalypse. Watching from the sidelines, Meow realized they're all spineless wimps, who can only whine and beg for help. Meanwhile, Big Brother has collected enough crystals and found the wheel of the apocalypse. It doesn't take a genius to figure out what's what. Jin asked me to give him the backpack he left with the Chu. Only she lost it. When Jin heard that, he got very angry and started yelling, "Chu, fuck. I gave you the simple task of keeping the backpack." Chu felt guilty about it. I decided to return the backpack myself. But Jin stopped her by telling her that it was no longer safe to go downtown. There were monsters and bandits all around. Jin didn't care that they were out of supplies. He cared more about the lost potion that was in his backpack. Level 1 potions aren't rare. Jin's can get them again. Plus, he's the only one who knows how to mix them. But first we need to find a regular wheel. Chu felt a lot of guilt towards the genie, and she wanted to make it up to him somehow. But Jin didn't need anything. He wanted to go home first, and then back to his temporary base. Meanwhile, the older brother is already spinning the wheel. When he gets a profession, he'll be hard to handle. The older brother, as well as Genie, got the black sector. I wonder what his profession was. From the wheel, a golden scroll fell out, signifying one of the great professions. From now on, Big Brother Alchemist is a trainee. Fortunately, he doesn't realize what it all means yet, and how much potential he possesses. Meanwhile, the elder brother didn't know that the amount of crystals he had deposited exceeded the amount of the lucky draw, and that amount would not be returned. And during the next rotation, the man will only need to put down the remaining number of crystals. Meanwhile, one of the bandits searched the center and found Jean's backpack. That's not good at all. If Big Brother finds the potion plus the alchemist skill, he will become invincible. Through his profession as an alchemist, the older brother learned for what is needed. It's a potion. Also, he was aware of its side effects. For ordinary people, this potion is deadly, because their bodies can't handle the vaporization of blood, as suddenly his assistant asks, "Big Brother, how do you know what this is?" And here it comes to him that thanks to his profession, he can description of various potions, knowing its side effects, but he took the risk of drinking it. He was sure his body could handle the strain. Effect of the potion further strengthened the alchemist's skill, and he felt an incredible strength that he had never felt before. When he saw what was happening to his older brother, his assistant decided to call for help. But no sooner had he run out of the room than a huge monster appeared in front of him. Think this is a great opportunity for Big Brother to test out his new skills. Whoa! Big Brother, with his bare hands, he was able to stop a metal weapon from hitting him. If he can do that, the genie doesn't stand a chance. Now he understood why Jin is so strong, and how he was able to defeat just the zombies alone. Jin brought all the girls from Faye's mansion. I don't think she's going to be too happy about that. In this house, they will rest and gain strength for a while. before they go hunting again. The first thing Jin decided to do was to visit Faye and tell her that he was back with guests. Except the house was empty. Jin had gone through every room in the house and hadn't found her. As suddenly, a woman's scream resounded throughout the house. "Jin, hurry up and run to the kitchen." In the kitchen, there were obvious signs of a struggle. Everything was scattered around, but the pans were still warm, so Faye could still be alive. Looking around better, Jin saw an obscure note on the refrigerator next to a bloody handprint. In the note, Faye wrote that there was another wheel at the supermarket nearby. Jin couldn't believe she'd decided to go there alone. Meanwhile, the older brother with his bare hands and wet hands blasted the metal weapon to pieces. Feeling such power, he became even more insane and bloodthirsty. People like him, when they get that kind of power, they become uncontrollable. From now on, he has two main goals. The first is to kill Jin, and the second is to become even stronger. But first, they decided to meet the rest of the gang. They searched for them for a long time and found them tied up on the floor, all of them beaten and maimed. Besides killing Don, Jin took everyone's stuff. An eye for an eye, so to speak. Upon hearing this, the older brother became furious. This time he personally decided to kill Jin. Meanwhile, back home, terror came over Jin, just like the first time. After that incident, he trusts his intuition, seeing how tired Jin was. Decided to please him as much as they could. Meow made a meal that she massaged and made him hot tea. After resting for a while, Jin said, "My companion Faye must have gotten into trouble, but she managed to leave information about the wheel, so we'll act quickly from the wheel at the supermarket." As she suddenly asks, "Jin, why are you so worried about her? Is this Faye your girlfriend?" But Jin was quick to reassure her, saying that Faye was just his good partner. This news greatly encouraged Chu, and a brilliant plan came to her. She wants to go with the genie and rescue his partner. That way, she wants to win his heart. If you think about it that way, every member of his team has certain abilities. Happy is smart and loyal to him, Meow is an excellent fighter, but Miss Pugh is questionable. All of a sudden, Miss Pugh says that on the health teacher, and took a first aid course, so she wants to go with him just in case. May not be her, and not as useless as it seems at first glance. Everyone has expressed a desire to go with the genie, except Meow. Jin asked her if she wanted to go with them. Meow replied, "I thought it was obvious that I was going with you, partner," having gathered all the supplies they couldn't carry. Jin realized that they only had enough food for 2 days, so they need to find Faye and a new wheel as soon as possible. But Meow found a way out of this situation. 875, she brought the police bureau's best car. Before the apocalypse began, her boss went to a lot of trouble to find it. Well, since the police are gone and their boss is a zombie, they can have him for themselves. This truck is truly amazing. First, it's armored, which is perfect for the apocalypse. Second, it has an off-road mode. And thirdly, it can go up to miles an hour. In their current situation, it couldn't have been better. Meow once again proved that Day was not her savior for nothing. Meanwhile, the older brother went out hunting for Jin, even though he hated it. But the Jin did something useful. Himself without realizing it, Jin stopped the internal coup in the gang. Let the big hunt begin. Thanks to the new truck, Jin and his crew can now get through crowds of zombies much faster and more safely. Everyone was just thrilled with the new car. Well, almost everyone. Chu realized that she's pathetic and useless against Meow. If this continues, there's no way Jin will choose her. Since did not specify which supermarket the wheel is in, they'll have to check each one in turn. Suddenly, Jin noticed something strange. Usually, so many zombies in one place never gather. But what's even weirder? The zombies aren't attacking them. It's like they're running from someone. Well, she quickly realized what was going on. In the distance, she saw a huge and incomprehensible silhouette. Whoever it is, if even zombies are afraid of him, it's best to stay out of his sight. Holy shit, he's gigantic. No wonder the zombies were afraid of him. Monsters like this are called supreme monsters. Their crystals are incredibly valuable. Also, their favorite food is zombies. Supreme monsters are considered invulnerable. Jin was well aware of the danger this monster posed. But Jin has fought one of these in a previous life, so he knows its vulnerabilities. But with his current level of martial arts, he's no match for him. Just as suddenly, a mutant monkey started running at the genie's truck. The only way to survive is to just run away. But the monkey was faster than the truck. It even managed to break the armored glass that should withstand a tank shell. Now we have to try and throw this monster off the truck. The genie accelerated and started driving from side to side. But the monster held on tight, and then the genie said, "Meow, now you're driving. I'm gonna go drop him." At full speed, Jean climbed out of the truck. The speed is so fast the wind could blow it away, as hard as it is. But the genie has to get rid of him at all costs. Otherwise, they'll all die. Except the genie completely forgot that the white monkey has a tail to grab its victims. But the good news is, Jean managed to get the monster off the truck. This is the second time this week that Jean has been on the cusp of certain death. In Jin's defense, in his past life, the supreme monsters didn't appear until the 7th year of the apocalypse, so he didn't expect to meet them now. But it doesn't matter. The monster's here and something has to be done about it. 907. It's still good that Jin brought Meow with him. It's the second time she's saved his life, by the way, but thereby dooming himself to danger. This monster is much smarter than the average zombie. Therefore, it will first try to kill someone who is more dangerous to it. Meanwhile, while Meow is trying to do something, Chu and Pooh are hiding in the car. I hope they do something. Meow fired a whole clip at the monkey, but it didn't work. Regular bullets wouldn't hit him, unless they can find a more powerful or magical weapon. You're my survivor. There's no escaping. In an attempt to dodge the monster, Meow jumped under the truck. Of course, that didn't stop him. It's amazing how easily he was able to lift a multi-ton machine. Pooh and Chu were still inside the truck. Damn it! Pooh fell through a broken window right onto the pavement. Finding herself on the street, she became easy prey for the monster. And this time, there's no one to come to her rescue. Jin is lying unconscious, and I'm out of ammo, although this wound is not fatal. But if she doesn't receive immediate first aid, she'll soon die of blood loss. As suddenly, there was a loud whistle that distracted the monster. At Jin's whistle, his friend Yoke came running. Now the two of them have a chance to take on this monkey. Although this monkey is fast, it's not like the mutant dogs. Using his advantage, the Yoke, it can easily distract the monster. He can distract the monster for as long as the genie needs. And to keep Jin from running at the monster with his bare hands, Meow threw him her gun, with one bullet left in it. But in order for Jin to do any damage this time, he cast a spell on the gun that increases its piercing power by and its damage by 10. Meanwhile, the Yoke continued to distract the monkey, but his strength was running out. He had to retreat, but the monster managed to hit him at the last moment, just as the monkey was about to kill the Yoke. Jin shouted, "Hey monkey, half-assed monkey! How about that?" Jin has only one shot to finish off the monster, from previous battles with such monsters. Jin knew that their weak point was the ridge that protruded from their backs. This type of mutated strengthened muscle causes the bones of the back to be exposed, which makes them vulnerable. And thanks to the technique-enhancing bullets, he was easily able to break his backbone. After that, Jin decided that he should develop his abilities, so he could use magic. While Jin was busy with the monster, that she took the injured Pooh away and gave her first aid. But Jin didn't know Poe was seriously injured yet. And the medicine they'd brought with them was only enough to decontaminate the wound. Finished with the monster, Jin ran straight to the girls in the truck and said, "I heard someone screaming. Are you all right?" Oops. For the first time in a long time, Jin saw a naked female body. Embarrassed, Jin immediately closed the door. But at least now he knew she was okay. Making sure the girls were generally okay, Jin decided to check on how the Yoke was feeling. Luckily, the wounds aren't severe and didn't affect his speed. But after the mutation, recovery will be slow. Then, Jin decided he had to thank the Yoke and find a way to speed up his recovery. Jin and his team have wasted too much time dealing with this monster. But until the Pooh can move on its own, they can't get out of here. But her wounds are more serious than Jin thought. She needs stitches. But they don't have the tools or anesthesia for that. Jin said he could do the tools, but the anesthesia would be a problem. In a previous life, Jin had often practiced suturing without anesthesia, so he was well aware that he couldn't bear the pain. When all of a sudden, Jin says, "There's a private property nearby that we passed. There's supposed to be anesthesia tools for the surgery. I'll go get them." Well, what about that supermarket and his friend Faye? Calm me down. I said that Faye is incredibly smart, and he's sure she was able to defend herself, so he's not worried about that. Such confidence in her was due to the fact that in the future she would become the 9th star, known as the Ray of Hope. But Meow suggested that they split up. She told Jin and Pooh to go look for medicine, and she would go and search the nearest supermarket. But Jin was adamantly against it. There's no telling what other monsters are out there. But Meow promised that he would be all right. She also promised that if she found the fairies, she would bring her back safe and sound. And if she found the wheel, she wouldn't touch it. It didn't take long for Jin to resist. He let her go it alone. Well, he warned her that the wheel was luring zombies. 955. It's amazing that Jin trusts other people so easily. considering he was killed by his own teammate in a previous life. Meanwhile, the older brother and his assistant were bicycling through the ruins of the city. The older brother was well aware that sooner or later they would run out of the food they stole from him. So soon they will go to the supermarket to replenish their supplies. And that's when Big Brother and Jin finally meet. Plus, they could use a refill themselves. But once inside the store, all they saw were empty counters, when suddenly out of nowhere, a packet of flour fell to the floor. It could only mean one thing, that they're not alone here. But after spinning the wheel and drinking the potion, it's not a problem for Big Brother. He was ready to kill this zombie, but he noticed that his behavior was very strange. For a while, Zombie just stared at them, then started walking deeper into the store. Big Brother, he knew right away it was Zombie looking for something. And anything Zombie's looking for is valuable. And then, they decided to just follow him. They were madly curious about where he would lead them. Walking just a couple of meters, the older brother heard an incomprehensible whistling. Zombie led them, right to the wheel of the apocalypse. It'll be the second wheel Big Brother's used. Meanwhile, Meow was already approaching the first of the supermarkets on his list. She found no fei or wheel in it, but she was able to get some supplies. Mao, I've searched 5 supermarkets, and not one of them had a wheel. And then she remembered Jin telling her that the wheel attracted a large number of monsters. Well, according to Pei, the wheel is in the supermarket. It's the last store left. Shuihua. It's the biggest store in the neighborhood. Meanwhile, Jin, Chu, and Pooh were already approaching the hospital. But she was getting worse and worse by the second. When they arrived at their destination, Gina decided to take out everything they needed on his own, so as not to put the girls in danger again. Plus by then, Pooh's already starting to get delirious. She needs her meds right now. Fortunately, Jean knew that the medication he needed was a floor above in the surgeon's office. Oh, what a hell of a time. This is when the monster showed up, when every second counts, when the dust cleared. Gina saw what appeared to be a huge mutant crocodile, and it was wearing bone armor. Unlike the Yoke, the mutated white monkey and crocodile are a type of mutated creature with incredible strength and having certain abilities. In a past life, humans managed to recognize something strange about these so-called higher monsters. Not from beyond the earth. They came with the apocalypse. In the world of apocalypse, they have a special purpose. They guard incredibly rare and valuable resources or rewards. Know it all. Jean realized that the hospital contained something incredibly valuable and useful during the apocalypse. To a genie, there's no way he could take on such a monster alone. But with his skills as a craftsman, he has a chance at success. So Jean decided to go back to the truck and get a weapon he could glamorize. The only thing they took with them was a bow. But even such a seemingly weak weapon can kill the supreme monster when casting a spell. But in order to use his skills, Jean needed something from a neighboring store. After laying out everything he could get his hands on in front of him, he realized it wouldn't be enough to win. But it should be enough to hold the monster off for a while. To use his bow and arrow improvement skill, he needs the same material used to make arrowheads and the same quality and quantity. This skill can not only change the appearance of an item, but also increase its quality and power. Now that the bow and arrows have been improved, he needs to make a strong golden net. He needs it so he can hold off the monster. In a past life, Jin had seen other survivors with the crafting profession. Used the fusion skill. This skill allows 2 different materials to be fused together while retaining their features. Well, when all the preparations are complete, it was time to get down to business, and there was less and less time left. Jin's only advantage over the monster was the surprise effect. Everything now depended on that shot. To the back of each of the arrows, Jin hooked a rope that was attached to the net. Well, I have to admit, his plan worked well. That should hold the monster off for a while. We need to make the most of every minute. First, we need to sneak inside the surgeon's office, get everything we need, and get out of here as fast as we can. Luckily, this office was just down the hall, and he quickly found everything he needed. Even though Jin was done in less than a minute, the crocodile was able to escape from the enchanted net. But Jin was so busy collecting medicine he didn't notice. Meanwhile, Big Brother had already dispersed the zombie crowd. Even with his strength, it was hard enough to do, but it was worth it. Now it's time to reap the rewards of your labors. But first you need to collect as many crystals as possible. He found a brand new wheel of the first rank. Big Brother immediately noticed that this wheel was different from the one he was spinning earlier. They only managed to collect 9 crystals, and it takes crystals to spin that wheel. And we need to get another one. As silly as it sounds, they just have to wait a little longer, and the zombies will come. Meanwhile, Miao has already come to the last most huge supermarket in the Juehua neighborhood. She was sure this was where the wheel was. The only thing that confused her was the utter silence, because the wheel is supposed to attract a huge number of zombies. And there are two options: either it's the wrong supermarket and Faye made a mistake, or all the zombies have already been killed. Meanwhile, the crocodile that Jin caught has already been completely freed. Hearing his growl, Chu was in no place to be. She realized that Jin was in great danger, and he couldn't just sit idly by, so she made a decision: to leave Pooh alone and go to the genie's rescue. How surprised she was to find a huge alligator inside the hospital. Jin was in a difficult situation. Dealing with such a rank 2 monster was already hard enough. Jin had managed to make it angry as well. Chu managed to hide until the monster spotted her. But she didn't come here to hide, she came here to help Genie. So she decided to try distract the monster so that Genie could get out of the office. As suddenly, around the corner, she saw strange plants. They looked like eggs. And that's when she decided to act. Meanwhile, the crocodile has broken down the office door. If he doesn't make it in time, there won't be a bone left for Gina. Hiding in the study, Jin made himself a promise that if he got out of here alive, he would improve his skills as a craftsman. That it wouldn't happen again. Gina, with what fury this crocodile tried to get at him. And then he realized he was guarding something. 10:24 through the broken glass, Jin noticed that sitting around the corner. When he saw her, he shouted, "Chu, are you an idiot? Why did you come here to cause me more trouble?" But right now, the genie needs to think about himself. Because the monster won't stop trying to kill him. Chu. She realized that it wouldn't be long before the monster killed Jin. But fear was gripping her body. But remembering how much Jin had done for her, she blurted out, "It was now or never," and ran to the eggs. 10:29. It was her turn to save Jean. As she ran to the eggs, she shouted, "Hey, you underdeveloped lizard! Look over here!" Well, you have to admit, her plan worked perfectly. Now we just have to try not to die. Seize the moment. And got out of the office. But there's no way he's gonna make it to choose. But the girl stood like a stone. Had she really thought of a way to escape the monster? Oh my good girl, she really is more me than meets the eye. Chu realized that monsters would choose saving their eggs rather than killing. Oddly enough, even mutant monsters cherish their family. Maybe humans aren't as different from them as we think. Now it's just a matter of getting out of here as fast as possible. Get out of here as fast as we can, before the alligator rips them to shreds. Only a Chu could have ruined her escape like that. She tripped over a piece of wall that was on the floor, but this time Jin was in time to help her. Grabbing her hand, he shouted, "You're crazy!" "Well, thank you. And now that everything's in place and the meds are in place, it's time to get out of here. I hope Poe's still alive." All of a sudden, Chu. "Jean, why isn't he running after us?" But it's very simple, Crocodile can't leave his eggs in danger. This news greatly reassured Chu, and now she felt useful. Unable to bear it, Jin grabbed her and said, "Chu, tell me honestly, do you want to die? You know how dangerous it is. If something happened to you, I wouldn't forgive myself." With anger, Jin squeezed her hand harder and harder, until Chu began to cry. In a trembling voice that said, "I was scared and worried about you, and I only did it because I wanted to save you." Actually, Jin was very touched by it, even though he didn't show it. Meanwhile, Miao found the wheel of the apocalypse. But she was quite alarmed. Zombie bodies scattered around. And then a voice came out of the darkness. Instead of zombie, a hot beauty appeared. "I think you can entertain me. But big brother, he doesn't know what he's up against yet." Meanwhile, Jin sewed up Pooh's wound. The girl was very embarrassed because she was naked. After the effects of the anesthesia wear off, he'll be in a lot of pain for a while. But he'll live. 10:51, I was really worried about leaving a huge, ugly scar. In fact, she should be glad she survived the blow. After stitches, Jin said that now she should rest and get a good night's sleep. Chu was very worried about Pooh's well-being. But Jin reassured her, saying that everything would be fine after sleeping. And then there was a loud growl, which startled Jean. But it was only Chu's empty stomach. Since that was the case, Jin decided to have a snack first before heading out to look for Miao. Meanwhile, Miao and Big Brother's fight is in full swing. Even without looking at the abilities and potions, Miao was not inferior to him in hand-to-hand combat. But she couldn't take a direct hit, even if it was a block. But she has no intention of giving up. She'll do anything to save herself. Her martial arts are really amazing. Even when she was falling, she was able to hit him. Even her older brother recognized her courage as strength, when suddenly he started laughing wildly, and through his laughter he said, "That's enough games, let me enjoy your sweet body." But in Miao's arsenal, there were jujitsu techniques. that could use the power of resistance against him. Big brother, he didn't expect this and got confused. Miao took advantage of it, but thanks to the potion, his body was strengthened. And this blow was no more painful to him than a mosquito bite. It only made him more angry, and he said, "Attack me again. Use what you know." Miao quickly realized that the older brother had gone through a mutation that strengthened his body, but there was nowhere to retreat to. So Miao decided that if she was destined to be here, the Emperor would be here. So be it, but she'll do anything to take him with her, and if the price of his death is her own life, she's willing to pay it. But it looks like the older brother is just playing with her. If he wanted to, he would have killed her long ago. Helper, watching from the sidelines at all, was surprised at how much Crumpling was so strong that he could resist his older brother. All his life, this guy has dedicated his entire life to serving his big brother. And this time, he decided to help him finish off Miao too, by attacking her from behind. "Miao, I didn't know there was anyone else here, so I didn't expect such an attack." Well, that only worked to his big brother's advantage. He took advantage of Miao's confusion and punched her right in the stomach. Lying on the floor in a semi-conscious state, she said, "Do you girls go to the bathroom together? Do you hold each other's hair when you spit?" These words hurt the elder brother very much. And then he said, "Idiot, who asked you to help me? Or did you think I would lose? After drinking this potion, I can easily defeat even cops like her." Lifting the half-dead Miao off the floor, he said, "Policeman, is justice being upheld? Bullshit. Only fists are true justice, and now you will feel it, in a second," before smashing her skull into the wall. He stopped when he saw her smile. "And now this idiot, he's gonna learn what real strength is." Jin's sudden appearance scared his older brother out of his wits. That only says one thing, he's scared of him. Now Miao can rest a little. Jin will totally figure it out on his own. Seeing Jin in front of him, the older brother was insanely happy to finally see him. Now he could get revenge for Jin stealing their things. But the genie didn't care that his older brother wanted to fight him. He came here for Miao. Jin was amused that his older brother thought he was a villain, even though he'd stolen his stuff first. But John couldn't let go of the fact that he'd almost killed Miao. So he decided to teach him a lesson. But the older brother was able to dodge even such an unexpected attack. At first, Jin thought that his martial arts level was at an all-time high. But as he stopped his fist, Jin realized that his older brother's strength and agility were just as good as his own. Feeling this, Jin realized that his older brother had found the potion that was in his backpack and drank it. So now their physical strength was at the same level, for all his attacks were too ordinary and predictable. Jin easily anticipated his next attack. Therefore, he was easily able to repel them all and counterattack. In his past life, Jin had acquired a unique fighting style. To an unprepared opponent, all of Jin's attacks will be unexpected. Knocking back his older brother with a hard kick to the ribs, Jin said, "You think you're tougher than me just because you drank that potion? You're sorely mistaken." But the older brother, confident of his advantage over the genie, he tried to attack him again. But the genie had no problem reading this attack as well. He was able to easily dodge it and come from the rear. Jin didn't play with him for long. He damaged his internal organs with the first blow. No matter how strong his older brother was, a ruptured kidney was always painful. That punch only made the older brother angrier. He started swinging his fists mindlessly, hoping to get Jin. All his attacks were unsuccessful. During the fight, the most important thing is to keep yourself in control and control your emotions. Although they are both one-star wars now, the reaction speed and attack power are pretty much the same. There's one big difference between the two of them, and that's Jin's decades of combat experience. This is what played a major role in their battle. Jin was able to knock out his older brother without a scratch. Even in this world of utter lawlessness and chaos, evil must be punished. Jin was faced with a hard choice of whether to let him live, or end them once and for all. At the same time, the older brother knelt down and bowed down, begging for mercy. Jin thought long and hard about what to do. In the end, but still decided to let him go for the first time. But I warned him that if it happened again, there would be no more mercy. Of course, this whole performance was just to make Jin relax, to make him feel superior, picking the perfect moment to attack. Big Brother decided to attack Jin from behind. This proves once again that people like him should be eliminated immediately. Jin, I knew this was going to happen from the start, so he didn't even expect them to part peacefully. This time, Gina decided to break his arm in 2 places at once, so he'd never think about attacking anyone again. 11-14, and finally a powerful hook to the rib cage, to disorient and knock the older brother out of breath. Looking at the heavily breathing bandit, Jin says, "That's a good plan, only if your opponent is stupid and you're not so weak." This time, Jin decided to let it go. Meow was shocked that Jin would just let those two thugs go, but to justify his action, Jin said, "You don't have to worry about them. They will die soon." Despite all the little annoyances, all in all, it went well. After making sure Meow was okay, Jin decided to use the wheel they'd been looking for so long on a tip from Faye. This battle made the older brother realize one simple thing, that the only person who's been with him this whole time is his assistant, who he so underestimated. But there was no way the older brother could give up the idea of killing Jin, especially after being humiliated like that. When he came into the alley, the helper said, "You know, big brother, I have followed you for so long. I've been faithful to you, but you didn't appreciate it. All the time I was thinking only one thing. Why only you can eat meat, why my brothers and I can't even eat beans. This is what happens when you don't appreciate your closest loved ones sooner or later. No matter how loyal they are, they will give you up." Sensing the perfect chance to finally end his older brother's tyranny, he couldn't pass up the opportunity. Just as Jin predicted, Big Brother would soon die. The rest of his gang couldn't survive without him, but they could no longer tolerate him either. 11:30. It's simple. You betray your own, they betray you. The deputy left his older brother to the hungry zombies. The cries of his older brother echoed through the deserted streets throughout the city. When she heard them, Chu was very worried that they were not Jin's screams. Even then, she didn't know that her abuser was already dead. As suddenly a genie comes out of the supermarket with a wounded Meow in his arms. She knew right away it was her older brother. If she'd known they'd hurt Meow, she would have run them over with a truck. As soon as night fell, they decided to make a small camp. After all, 2 members of their team were seriously wounded and needed to rest. Sitting in front of the fire, she asked Jean, "Look, shouldn't we hide the wheels so people can't use them?" And then Gina told her that the position of the wheels could not be changed. And once word of it spreads, there will be a war between people for the right to use the wheel. Jean already has a huge advantage over all the other points because he has already used 2 wheels. In all that time, they managed to get a few things. A potion that increases physical strength, a medicine that can prevent mutation, a necklace, and a silver shield. Alone, there was no way Jin could have collected that many crystals. Meanwhile, Chu took a closer look at the necklace. That necklace looked amazing on her, especially in combination with her huge breasts. But Jin said that Chu wasn't ready to wear it yet. After all, it's not just an accessory, but a powerful magic item. Chu, very upset that she couldn't take the necklace. But there was a little surprise waiting for her from Jin. As suddenly Jin said, "You all need to realize one simple thing. The past world is not coming back." "Well, that's not all. I didn't save you out of the goodness of my heart. I saved you because I want you to be my helpers. And to help you do that, I'm going to give you a power called the future." Girls didn't understand what it all meant. But Jin explained to them that it was a reward from the wheel, which will increase body functions such as muscle strength, speed, even immunity. Hearing this, Chu asked Jin, "Isn't that a superpower?" But Jin explained to them that it was an entry-level potion and it only increased body functions by 30%, which would make it easier for them to fight zombies. But Chu realized that with her physical condition, a 30% raise wouldn't help much. She's having trouble opening a can of soda. Well, this potion has an amazing ability. It can develop your body's potential and only then increase it. So all of your stats will increase by twice the minimum. As Meow suddenly asks, "Jean, have you become so strong because of this case?" Jin laughed and said, "Look at my body, with these muscles. Can I compare to a professional policeman? Potion only improves bodily functions, right? But you, Jin, know a lot of information about the apocalypse, and your martial arts are higher than any cop's. So who are you?" Meow asked. Chu was also interested in this question. After all, the first time they met, Jin knew everything. But an ordinary person who had just been in the apocalypse could not know all this. And then Meow asks, "Jean, tell me honestly, do you know the real reason the apocalypse started?" Jin briefly said that everything he knows about the apocalypse he learned from Faye. If they want to know more, they can ask her once they find her. Jin couldn't tell them he was reborn. Besides, they're unlikely to believe it, and that's his main advantage. Before drinking this greens, I asked Jin if it had any side effects. Jin didn't want to hide the truth from them. So he told them that many people didn't survive after drinking this potion because of the heavy bleeding. Jin wasn't going to force them to drink the potion. He wanted them to weigh the risks and decide for themselves if they needed it or not. As expected of a police officer, Meow agreed without a second thought. After all, He who doesn't take risks doesn't survive. Before giving the potion to Meow, Jin warned her again about the side effects. He recommended that she drink the potion in the morning. Chu was incredibly afraid to drink that potion, but she realized she could no longer be a liability to their team, and calling out for Jin every time there were monsters around. When suddenly, Jean grabbed the lock on Chu's sweatshirt and started undoing it, with the words, "Next time you put on an uncomfortable sweatshirt, it'll be hard for you to move." When Meow saw that, she got really angry. She didn't admit it, but she liked Jin, so she couldn't stand it when he spent time with someone else besides her. Before announcing and in camp, Jean told everyone to get a good night's rest, for they had something important to do tomorrow. Because the girls had a very hard day ahead of them tomorrow, Jin decided to go on watch. As suddenly, not far away in the darkness, he noticed some silhouette. Phew, it was just Chu this time. She couldn't sleep because she was very afraid. Seeing her frightened face, Jan asked, "If you're afraid to take the potion, I'm not forcing you." But Chu pounced on the genie and said, "No, I'm not afraid to drink the potion. It's just that if I die tomorrow, I won't be able to see you again." Hearing this, Jin felt very sad that something might happen to her. Anyway, he cared about her. As suddenly, John says, "If so, let me ask you again. When you get your power, I won't be able to just let you go. I will ask you to come with me and fight for my goals. Will you do that?" But Chu was the only one who blindly trusted Jean. She'd do anything for him. She realized she owed him her life. If Jin hadn't saved her then, none of this would have happened. All this time, Jean knew their conversation was being overheard. Meow stood there just long enough to figure it out. She was only willing to go after the genie if he tells her what he plans to do next. Realizing the hopelessness of the situation, Jin told me that the first thing he was going to do was go to the hospital, and then go to Pearl Lake on the south side of town. But even though Jin shared his plans with them, Meow decided to leave them. "It's a shame she'll be leaving. She's got a lot of potential." Meow laughed and said, "You should see your faces. I'll be gone for a while. I have some things I need to do. Afterward, I will join you at the Pearl Lake." As suddenly, the Meow holds out a tribble to the genie and says, "Take these with you. They may be useful." It's funny that Meow decided to give them away right now, since Jin was just about to ask her for them. For the morning, Jin handed out a flask of potion to each girl. One by one, the girls started drinking these potions. Side effects, they felt immediately. Their whole body began to feel as if it were cracking at the seams. Before leaving, Jin told the girls to rest. But if they suddenly feel better, could go to a neighboring area to hunt. Meanwhile, Jean and the Yoke go to the hospital. Jin came to the hospital for a reason. In a previous life, he heard that there are 3 guardian monsters in this hospital. Killed more than 1 survivors. After the Star Wars measures, and killed these 3 beasts. With the drawing and the eggs the monsters left behind. Rumors say that the drawing is a blueprint of a sword-shaped weapon. Because soon after that, many people with excellent sword-fighting skills began to appear in the team where that person was. And this time, Jean decided it would all belong to him. Of the nearest zombies were killed by him to prevent an accident. 1197. All that's left to do is make the final preparations, and then we can go into battle. The last time he faced this guardian beast, he was not fully prepared. He didn't realize that the power of the bow and arrow was too low. This gun isn't bad, but it's just a gray color rank. The power is not much stronger than any ranged weapon, so he can try to improve the slugs and claws he ripped from the lizard. Using his artisan skill, Jeans crossed lizard claws and regular bullets. In the end, he obtained magic bullets that could greatly increase penetration, damage, and destructive power once magic was introduced. Plus this time he has with him a mutant dog whose speed skills are simply astounding. Together, they have a good chance of defeating this monster and getting the long-awaited reward. But Jin decided to leave Yoke outside to report to him in case of danger. It is time to get from words to action. Crocodile immediately sensed Jean's presence. Gina decided to distract the monster from the eggs with the classic jacket trick. And I have to admit, it worked perfectly. As soon as Monster saw the familiar jacket, she immediately decided to attack. But Jean's main goal was to drive the monster as far away from his balls as possible. Monster's reaction to the jacket was because it was red. Red makes the crocodile angrier than the bull. Jin knew this and used this ruse to lure the monster into a trap. In an effort to catch the jacket, Monster exposed his vulnerable area around his stomach. It's just a pity that even the improved bullets couldn't penetrate the weakest point in his shell. Now the genie will have to fight the monster at knife point, but there's no reason to panic. Everything is going exactly according to Jean's plan. For surprise attacks, the crocodile often uses its strong tail, Of course, knowing each monster's fighting style and their vulnerabilities gives a huge advantage to the genie. When Jean's first time failed to penetrate the crocodile's thick armor, he came up with a new, riskier plan. If you can't break through the monster's thick armor from the outside, that Jin will try it from the inside. Luckily, he still has a couple of magic bullets left. We need to climb right into the monster's hollow. But if you do it fast and don't think, it'll work. Jin fired the remaining pair of bullets directly into the monster's mouth. It's impossible to survive after that. Now that the monster is defeated, Jin will finally be able to get the blueprint and the monster's eggs. Has finally found what he's been looking for. With the strongest weapon in the apocalypse, no monster is too strong for him. After reading the scroll in the egg, Jin learned that the weapon had 3 ranks. At the first rank, he could access the power of the red moon. At the second rank of the dancing sand, and finally at the third rank of the lunar battlefield. To Jin's surprise, this sword only had 2 skills, one passive and one active. But with his profession as an artisan, he wouldn't be able to reach the third rank, although weapons and equipment possessing a skill is already pretty amazing. Well, it's a purple-ranked sword and has 2 skills. Its power is already incredible. But there was one huge problem. To create this sword, Womon rank 5 magic crystals were required. To begin with, Jin decided to concentrate on creating a Blood Moon rank 1 sword. As for the second and third rank, everything could be solved with money. Also among the eggs, Jin discovered the cure for small evolution. People can greatly increase their physique by eating it, but Genie wondered what would happen to an animal if he ate it. But luckily, Jin had someone to test it on, so he called the Yoke. Jin decided to share a small evolution along with the Yoke. Jin felt the change almost immediately. His body became stronger, and his thinking speed accelerated by leaps and bounds. There's a saying for a reason. Small evolution is not just a potion, it's a potion of the new you. Yoke also clearly changed. It now has a yellow crystal. Jin asked for a demonstration of new abilities. And so the new skill Yoke Fur shot, in which the dog can create metal rods from his fur and shoot them. But there's one little nuance. The Yoke goes bald for a while until new hair grows in. But luckily, as much as Yoke is a mutant dog, his fur grows back in minutes. Especially since his skill could be very useful. Can't just sit around all day eating that soup. When he left, he told me to leave the Yoke off the other 2 eggs. Meanwhile, Jin dared to surrender his first rank sword to Blood Moon. To do that, he's gonna need a huge amount of ferrous metal, which he found in an abandoned hospital. Using the skill of a craftsman, Jin got down to business. He had all the materials he needed. To create this sword, he needs crocodile claws, monkey fangs, 1 magical crystal of the 2nd rank, and a huge amount of iron. Now we just have to pray that the genie has the skill level to create something like this. But after spending a lot of time and putting in a lot of effort, Jin still made it. Unbelievable! A rank 1 sword was able to cut through a huge steel pillar without any problems. I wonder what the 2nd and 3rd rank swords are capable of. But the same one notices that he still has some materials left and can make weapons for Chu and the others. Also, Jin decided to share a minor evolution potion with the girls. If they survived the first potion, it would make them practically invincible. Back at the camp, Jin saw that the girls were fine. It was clear from their appearance that the potion had worked. During Gina's absence, and were able to collect over crystals. She was just thrilled with how easily she was killing regular zombies. Everything went pretty smoothly, not considering that Chu killed the first zombie and threw up right on the Pooh's sweatshirt. Jin praised the girls for the work they had done. Although these magic crystals were not many, but they had clearly adapted to the conditions of the apocalypse. So the entire journey was not in vain. As suddenly, Jin holds out a container of liquid and says, "You must be tired. Here, have some food." Girls were greatly embarrassed by the appearance and utensils in which this soup was. They asked what it was. Jin just said it would make them even stronger. Now that the girls are ready, we can go to the Pearl Lake. Since Jin gave another evolution potion to the girls, he has 1 last monster egg left, which he must keep, whatever it takes. Chu and Pooh turned this unpleasant-looking liquid into a very tasty soup. Pooh, I couldn't help but notice that the Yoke had changed a lot. Suddenly she said, "It has not been long since we last saw each other. Why have you become so bald?" But after a little more time, she felt an incredible strength she had never felt before. She felt her body grow stronger. Noticing that Chu has already eaten, Jin says to her, "Baby girl, if you are already free, come to me. I have something for you." From the pocket of his jacket, Jin pulls out a shoulder made of mutated vines and holds it out to Chu. When suddenly Jin says, "Try it out. See if it suits you or not." If it does, you can keep it. Taking this whip in her hands, Chu felt an incredible surge of strength and energy. It was as if she had become one with him. Wow, that's amazing! Where does one get such skill with a whip? Anyway, it's like this weapon was designed specifically for her. 1266, you have to admit, her speed and strength are incredible. For someone who's never used such a weapon before. Chu was delighted to receive such a gift. It will definitely be useful now. Every day, his team grows stronger and stronger. Even the seemingly useless Chu is now a powerful warrior. When suddenly Jin says, "And as for you, my Miss Pooh, I've been thinking for a long time, but I haven't come up with anything. What kind of weapon do you want?" Pooh was very confused by such a question. After all, she had never even held something like this before. But Jin, he understood perfectly. That's why he didn't rush her to choose. It's normal, because in normal life, the most dangerous thing people used was a kitchen knife. Everything they'd done before, the potion, the new weapons, it was all for the next Pearl Lake operation. Before setting off, Jean warned that besides dangerous monsters and a crowd of zombies, they might be attacked by other people. Despite all the danger, Chu and Pooh were willing to risk everything. After all, Jin had done the same for them. As suddenly Jin said, "Then let's go." I said it could be dangerous, but I didn't say what we'd get if we succeeded. But Jin decided to keep it a secret for now. Past life. After Jin ate all the food in his house, he got up the courage to go outside. Jin walked for a long time through the empty streets of the former megapolis, until one day he saw a flash. It made an incredible whistling noise. He didn't know what it was yet, and then he decided to observe this strange place. Minutes later, there was a huge explosion at the spot where the flash appeared. After this explosion, Jin decided to go to the other survivors and find out what happened there. And then he learned that there was a very strange wheel on the Pearl Lake. There is no choice on it except for ingot pictures, and it requires only magic crystals of the first rank to spin it. Once this wheel is activated, it will act as a dungeon wheel. The one who spins it will receive a mission notification and will be informed of the mission reward. No one spoke of their battle results. Those who joined the war were either wiped out, went missing, or became superpowered, which Jin hadn't gotten to yet. Well now, he's firmly in the lead of the strongest survivors of the apocalypse. Meanwhile, they had already arrived at the Pearl Lake. It was strange that there weren't any zombies around. When suddenly Jin said, "If luck smiles on us today, we will become the strongest people in this world." 10 hours ago, something very strange happened. Two of the strongest factions in the post-apocalyptic world meet. That man's name is General E, and he leads an armed army of professional assassins. His main goal was to eliminate his rivals on the way to his goal. The man in the suit's name is Lee, and he used to be the CEO of one of the largest weapons companies in the world. But now his brothers are in grave danger. It's all about General E wanting to absorb the Lee faction, otherwise just destroy it. Especially since General Lee only had a dozen one-star soldiers under his command, while General E had a whole squad of one-star soldiers. General E, an incredibly horrible man with years of combat experience. And human lives, even during the apocalypse, mean nothing to him. But he tries to solve all problems with words first. While whether a very young but incredibly intelligent young man, not wanting any unnecessary bloodshed. General E promised that Mr. Lee's men would not work for free. They could ask for any reward they wanted. Weather was cautious of all the general's words. All the more reason to make the most of it. Their plan was to go to the Pearl Lake and use this wheel. After thinking it over, he agrees to their proposal. All the more so because he can also benefit from it. He has to work with the general's confidant, Staff Sergeant Wang. General needed Mr. Lee's help only because he received information that Pearl Lake is home to an incredible monster that no one wants to fight. To control the situation, the general sent his trusted man named Xiao to the lake. Fortunately, Jin knew of all the dangers ahead, both the monster and the soldiers. 1306, he's tasked with tracking a monster with a bag of gold, and if found, to report back to him immediately. And he assigned Pooh to be his handler during the battle. That is, to give him all the information about what's going on around him, and pay special attention to the little monsters. Meanwhile, Jean will be ambushed in a business center near the lake. Since Miss Pooh is not a combat unit, she must spend the entire time of the battle in a safe place. The perfect place to see everything is another skyscraper near the park. Before starting, Jin said, "Although this monster is not strong, but it is very cunning. It can summon many strong mutated monsters. So be careful, and don't move around alone." As suddenly a huge pillar of light appeared from the lake. This means the wheel is activated. And there he is. Despite his small size, He is very dangerous. There's a reason he's called a draft. Seeing the monster, Xiao immediately reported it to General A. In turn, as soon as the summoner saw a threat to himself, he blew into a small tube emitting a thin, shrill whistle. On this sound run away a variety of monsters ranging from simple zombies to supreme monsters. But the general's army has been waiting for them to show up. I think for their M4A1s, regular monsters won't be a problem. As suddenly, the private came to the general with a report of the situation. Several things became clear from his report. First, all their teams are in the right positions. Secondly, communication with Zhao's team had been lost. And thirdly, there were about 10 mutated zombies moving towards them. General E, it wasn't the least bit scary, but the ordinary soldiers were truly terrified. As suddenly the general cried out, "Brothers, look at me! I have brought you possibly to death. We are surrounded by countless monsters. Every one of them wants to tear us apart. If we don't retreat now, we could die here. I know many of you are worried about your family members and also feel confused and indecisive. But you are still wearing this garment. I am just like you in my hometown. My parents, my wife, and kids, I don't even know if they're safe. But, is that the reason we'll give up? Are these the reasons why we will give up our beliefs? We are soldiers. We were born for war, and now it's war. We must become stronger, stronger than the monsters, stronger than anything in the world. Even if I die, I want to die in this garment, to bring this world the last glory to die. Look around you. It's all ours. I gotta hand it to the general. He's got a real mouth on him. However, most of them won't live to see the sunset." Jin watched from his hiding place. He even admitted to himself that he envied their fighting spirit. At times like this, people's blood boils for the living. But they have a strong argument against zombies, and it's tanks. Meanwhile, on the other side of the lake, something strange is happening. When Jin saw it, he turned pale. He knew it was a portal to another dimension. The point is that summoners use their horn to open gates to other dimensions. This horn can not only summon surrounding monsters, but also from other dimensions. And this time, the Crimson Steel Beast emerged from the portal. With its claws, it can tear through concrete fortifications, not to mention the soft bodies of humans. Following the Purple Steel Beast, a tier monster terror battle goat came out. But that's not all. And last from the portal, a pack of purple cloud ants appeared. To be honest, Jin knew it would be incredibly difficult, but he didn't think it would be this difficult. In his previous life, he could only summon one monster from another dimension at a time. Why did so many strong and troublesome monsters appear this time, which are incredibly difficult to deal with? Ever since the apocalypse began, not only wheels have been falling from the sky, but countless golden holy lights have been able to strike the earth. This place is filled with many monsters that came from outer space. It's a place that can make a person feel very desperate. That place has all kinds of strange flowers, springs. You can also find many undiscovered treasures there. That's what the other dimension is all about. Damn it, what the hell is that? That monster makes Jin look like an annoying gnat. It's a giant zombie ape, but it can't be because a monkey isn't a beast, it's a zombie. A zombie of the 3rd rank. Apocalypse was not more than a month ago. How could 3rd-rank zombies appear in such a short period of time? In his past life, Jin had heard that humans had evolved to the 3rd rank, but it took them more than years to do so. To cope with a monster of the 3rd rank is not even capable of an entire division of tanks. To defeat such a monster, you need enchanted weapons in the higher ranks. Meanwhile, Jin set out on his mission. The first thing he wanted to do was to find out where the terror goat was, thanks to Pooh's vigilance. Jin knew and understood exactly the entire situation on the battlefield. Priority target for the Pooh, Jin left the terror goat behind, and asked him to report his slightest movements. With so many monsters, the genie couldn't do it alone, so he called in the help of a Chu. Despite all the risks, Jin ran towards the Pearl Lake. He was willing to risk his life for it. As suddenly, Chu radioed in to report that she saw the summoner, riding a purple battle ant, running around the Pearl Lake. When suddenly something says, "Look, Jin, I don't know how important this is, but the portal hasn't closed yet." From his past life, Jin knew that summoning could only use the horn once a day, so there shouldn't be any more monsters. But Gin was confused by the fact that the portal was still here, which meant that someone could emerge from it at any moment. But now is not the time to think about that. It's time to finally put the Blood Moon to the test. It's the best blade the genie's ever had. Blood Moon cuts zombie flesh even better than a chainsaw. Although now wasn't the best time to do it, Jin couldn't let the crystal just go missing. When suddenly, Jin's attention was caught by the voice of a young boy asking for help. He turned around and saw the terror goat running after him. Goat of Terror. A 2nd-rank monster. This is probably one of the easiest monsters to deal with at the moment. Its body is also known as a treasure goat and yellow fur that is incredibly expensive. 1364, so killing the Terror Goat could make some money. Plus, Jin hasn't tested Blood Moon on a serious monster yet. Is amazing. Like a knife to butter. It's amazing that even a first-rank blade can pierce the skin of monsters from another dimension with such ease. At that moment, the genie's true bloodthirstiness and ferocity awoke. The Blood Moon, living up to its name. But the goat wasn't going to give up so easily. He tried to throw Jin off his back. 1368, all to no avail for him. Jin stabbed the Blood Moon right into his spine. This monster's eyes glowed bright red. This is an omen of its imminent demise. All right, -1. The other survivors were shocked at how easily Jim had handled the monster. Even though he was a one-star hero like them, the monster couldn't just leave without a gift for the genie. The fall of its multi-ton body sent splinters flying from the ground and shattered the genie's face. Jin's eyes filled with blood. The Blood Moon had clearly changed him. Now all that's left is to take everything of value from this asshole. The other survivors couldn't believe their eyes. After all, they couldn't even scratch the Terror Goat. They had miraculously survived thanks to the genie. Not wanting to communicate with them, Jin said, "Since you guys were running away, just get out of here and don't come back." As one of them suddenly shouted out, "Actually, we fought that monster too, and we deserve half the spoils." These words greatly made Jin laugh. "Calm down," he said. "Your so-called reward is that you couldn't even scratch him?" These idiots started yelling at Jin that he was just lucky, and said that if Jin didn't leave right away, they wouldn't kill him. Jin couldn't take it anymore and shouted, "You bunch of idiots, get out of here!" As suddenly, Chu reports over the radio that a draft riding a purple ant has broken into a candy store. Today, Jin's main objective was the draft. At all costs, he must not be allowed to fall into the hands of others. Wife needs to get all the tyrant goat treasure as quickly as possible and run to the candy store. When suddenly, one of the survivors who was running away from the goat decided to attack the genie, shouting, "It's all mine! Get your hands off me!" Apparently, he hasn't fully realized who's standing in front of him yet. He reminds me of my older brother. But, the last time, Jin had learned his lesson. That people like that, you can't sit around no matter what it takes. How suddenly Jin said, "There's a saying in the apocalypse. When you want to kill someone, don't forget that you could be killed too." It's funny to watch the confidence drain from people's faces. After collecting all the most valuable things he could get from the Terror Goat, Jin went to the candy store. Wow, what a twist! After her departure, Meow joined the ranks of General E. Apparently she'll be a cop until her last breath. This cute and harmless at first glance girl's name is Liao. She is Meow's little sister. But here's the Meow. Not forever. She just wanted to make sure her sister was okay. As it is, her heart belongs to the genie. The sound of their squad firing attracted a lot of attention from the monsters. But the biggest problem was that those sounds attracted a third-rank monkey. There was no way their automaton could ever handle the monster's thick hide. General E's soldiers tried their best to repel the monkey's attack, to no avail. Plus, they've got monsters coming in from the rear, even though they're seemingly harmless rats. But if you give them a slack, they'll eat you human in less than seconds. But that wasn't their only problem. Monsters were coming out of every crevice. When she saw that her battle buddy was in danger, Meow didn't hesitate to sacrifice herself. The wound was deep enough to turn Meow into a zombie. If she's not given the antidote right away, she'll turn. Was the best thing her partner could do, was to avenge her. So he fired a whole clip into the zombie's head, seeing how deep her wound was. Everyone began to worry that Meow wouldn't last much longer. Yelp even offered to cut off the infected part of her arm. "Anything is better than being a zombie," she added. Scared for herself, told him she'd taken evolution's cure, and that she was safe from the zombie virus. Naturally, no one believed her, thinking she was just trying to save her arm. So she decided to show them what she could do. With his bare hands, the Meow punched through a thick concrete wall through and through. It was clearly not the turn anyone expected, but they should not forget that there is a third-ranked monster running at them, and they need to do something about it immediately. As expected, ordinary bullets had no effect. But every monster has vulnerabilities. But ordinary bullets can't hurt a rank monster. But how then did Meow manage to do it? And then she remembered that before she left, Jin had given her a small pile of bullets. Apparently, those bullets that Jin gave Meow were improved by his tinker skill. 1413, although that shot didn't kill the monkey. But it sure wounded him. From this, the monster became even angrier and more ferocious. His strength was staggering, and he threw a huge SUV like a snowball. On his way to the candy store, Jin decided to check out the situation and contacted Chu, but there was complete silence on the radio. Jin was starting to worry about her when suddenly she came on the line and said, "Sorry, I got held up by a bunch of idiots." Jin knew exactly who she was talking about. So he asked if she needed help. But Chu was sure she could do it all by herself. But Jin reminded her that she must survive at all costs. If something happens, she must team up with Ms. Pooh. A couple blocks away from you, Jin saw trucks flying and heard a monkey roar. He knew right away that the monster was hurt, but it was impossible to engage the monkey. Now Jin had not yet recovered from his encounter with the tyrant goat. He could use a healer. In the apocalypse, many survivors died not in battle, but because they got very sick, and their lack of skills in medicine prevented them from surviving. All the more so in the world of apocalypse, medicines are an incredible luxury. That's why it's best to have a pharmacist on the team. Funny, most likely Chu met a small detachment of General Lee. They may have looked like real scum at first glance, but they wished no evil for Chu. Their squad leader noticed that Chu was an unusual girl, but the judge her personality and insecurities. He realized that she was just a member of the team, but incredibly strong nonetheless. And then he wanted to know her secret. When all of a sudden he said, "Look, we don't want to fight. I just want information on how you got so strong." Chu told them that before the apocalypse, she was a stupid and naive girl who was manipulated by everyone. But when the world changed, everyone who bullied her died, and she survived. Initially, he couldn't believe his ears, thinking she was the one who killed all her enemies. Chu swung her whip and said, "All of this is thanks to one man who makes me a better person. He teaches me, and now this man needs my help. He's in danger, and you're stopping me." What? Determined to make her way to the genie at any cost. I gotta admit, Chu looks even sexier when she's fighting. On his way, Jin saw a very unusual picture that interested him. The whole point is that on his way, he came across a detachment of General E, who fought the purple ants. Their weapon, generally quite effective against monsters of this class. Them even managed to kill a few ants. Besides, the sound of gunfire will attract a lot of new monsters. They don't know the characteristics of these ants, and in a battle against monsters like this, that's the most important thing. Because if you know what your opponent is capable of, you know how to fight him. Peculiarity of purple ants is that even after death, they are still able to live for some time. And the slime they use to attack is poisonous. It can melt even thick metal. Watching from the sidelines, Jin thought for a long time whether he should get involved in this fight. Jin was well aware that if he helped them, he might lose his only opportunity to catch the draft. 1444, so it didn't take him long to decide to go after him. But at the coordinates that Pooh told him, there was nothing. But then Jin noticed a flock of purple ants running around a small building near the lake. Running closer, Jin saw another portal. But it can't be. After all, a summoner can only open one portal a day. Seeing him, Jin shouted out, "Holy shit, what is it this time?" This time, something very strange is happening. The portal has started to behave differently, when suddenly the earth began to shake, and a huge monster appeared from the portal. It can't be. A prisoner in chains, even in his past life, never saw him, only legends about him, is one of the strongest monsters capable of breaking barriers. Although the apocalypse has only recently begun, has a green crystal on its head, indicating that it is an evolved monster of the 4th rank. If there are already monsters like this appearing now, then soon we should expect monsters above the 7th rank. Last life, when there were no star hunters, the prisoner in chains was invincible. He had no purpose, but when he traveled, everything he touched was destroyed. He single-handedly destroyed over survivor bases, until the 9th Star Hunter finally appeared among the humans, at which point a team of 3 of humanity's strongest warriors were able to defeat him. It was after that battle that Faye got her nickname, the Killer Rose. Technically, Jin is just a 1-star hunter, but after taking the evolution drug and monkey meat, his powers equal 3 stars. With his professional advantage and understanding of apocalypse, killing a rank 2 monster is still possible. But if Jin wants to stay alive, he should avoid encountering such monsters for now. The most important thing right now is the treasure monster. Jin has to catch him and get his bag. Fortunately, the prisoner in chains didn't notice Jin. Well, when Jin went into the candy store, he didn't find a monster, just dead bodies. Jin reported this to Ms. Pooh, and in response, there was only silence. Jin was worried that something had happened to them, but then Jin heard the bolt behind the back door twitching, followed by a series of gunshots. Jin breathed a sigh of relief, thinking it was the end of him. But then he heard one of the fighters shout, "General E, requesting reinforcements. We found the summoner with the gold bag. He attacked us. Soldiers even managed to wound him. Hearing this, Jin ran towards the monster. He can't let someone else take possession of the summoning treasure. But between him and the monster became soldiers. Jin was forced to remove the obstacle. Jin tried not to kill them, but only to knock them out. He didn't want to get blood on his hands, especially since they did not put up a decent resistance. Jin couldn't help but notice that it was a military weapon. It looked like General Ye had spent a lot of resources for this operation. Rewards from the summoning sack will not be a secret forever. Soon all who participate in this battle will be able to know what they are fighting for. Jin is obligated. Get that sack first. Spitting blood, the commander reported to the general that if he did not send reinforcements immediately, others would take the sack. I wonder if this monster has a very different demeanor from the others. But he seems to have a lot of authority among the monsters. Before the monster sees Jin is the perfect time to attack! As suddenly, the summoner began to stare at Jin with his huge eye with a perplexed look on his face. Oddly, the purple ant had noticed Jin a long time ago. But it didn't attack without a summoning order. But there were unusual ants in the draft's personal guard. He was guarded by a general ant. As a rule, ordinary battle purple monster ants are only first rank. But there are also second-rank general ants and other third-rank ants. Like ants, they have a queen. But no one's ever seen her. Maybe she's a fourth rank or even higher. Ants generals, the monsters are considered a sort of special forces. They are skilled at sneak attacks, and always attack to the death. But their main difference from ordinary ants is their ability to fly. But Jin was quick to correct it. The Blood Moon clipped 2 wings in 1 blow. The main arsenal of ant generals was aerial attacks. Without wings, he's no more dangerous than a normal ant. Jin's was easily able to deal with the panicking monster. At the same time, Jin does not miss the opportunity to get the magic crystal. Jin is finally left alone to face the summoning. The monster doesn't stand a chance in a fair fight. 1490, the monster had nowhere to go. He trapped himself, when suddenly the summoner throws something in Jin's direction. But Jin notices in time that the summoner has thrown him a scroll. But it was not a simple scroll of weapons or medicine. It was a skill scroll. In Apocalypse, it's a very valuable item. And Jin got the novice summoning skill. This is an excellent skill, especially if you improve it. Eventually you can summon huge monsters. Well, Appeal continued to pelt Jin with various scrolls, hoping to escape. The second scroll was also my usual scroll. It's a profession upgrade scroll. I can see why everyone is so eager to get their hands on the summoning bag. Past life, Jin nearly died trying to get his hands on this scroll. He is surprised that the summoning just happens to be scattered exactly left and right. If he's throwing away such precious scrolls, I'm afraid to imagine what he's trying to preserve. This time, the genie managed to get the evolution potion and a profession scroll. I wonder what his new profession is. Wow, by opening the scroll, Jin has found a profession as a gardener. For the world of Apocalypse, it's not very useful, but it can be useful in certain situations. Meanwhile, Meow and her sister and her squad are still fighting the monkey. Meow used to think that evolutions, the bullet, the gun was a reward, that she deserved for her contributions. But now she realized she wasn't worthy of it all. But even so, Jin had done it for her. Saw Meow wound the giant monster. The other soldiers wondered how she did it. Meow promised that if they got out of here alive, she'd tell them everything. Luckily, she still had some magic bullets that Jin gave her. Thanks to them, she was able to wound the monster again. If she keeps this up, there's a chance she could beat a 4th-ranked monkey. While the monster is wounded, one must continue to attack it with every means they have. As suddenly, the room they were in, a man in a suit comes in and says, "Who just fired? Follow me." The general has ordered the shooter to report immediately and join his group. If Meow leaves them, it would mean the certain death of the whole squad. Well, apparently, Meow didn't even think about obeying the general's orders and leave her friends in the lurch. As suddenly Meow screamed, "Faster! Attack together! To the right knee quickly!" Team without a second thought came to the rescue Meow, especially since their lives were at stake. The bespectacled man wouldn't shut up. "Hey, didn't you hear me? I said it was an order." But Meow just ignored him. The most important thing right now is to just survive. And here, a bespectacled man notices that Meow's weapon is very different from the others. He's making things worse by his actions, obstructing the only person who can save them. And he says, "Meow, what do you think you're doing? You got that gun illegally? Why don't you let me check it out? You really are such an idiot. I'm trying to save us better. Get out of here. I'm staying here, not going to any general's group. So don't piss me off or I'll kill you," Meow added. But this man, he wouldn't stop shouting like a madman. You didn't obey my order. You will be disciplined for this. But Meow quickly appeased him with an accurate shot a couple centimeters from his head. Even then, it was clear that Meow would not be able to stay with her friends, and then death would await her. As suddenly Meow says, I hope you understand me. You really are very dear to me. But I can't be with you. Time. Open your eyes to the brutal truth. Meow asked them if they knew what they were fighting for, and how they would be paid for it. It's all about Meow hearing the conversation between the general and the group commander. The soldiers are just cannon fodder for them. The general left the best weapons in his group. Their plan was to break through the monsters at the cost of hundreds of ordinary soldiers' lives. All so that the general could get the evolution potion for himself, his wife, and their son. And lastly, Meow says, if we survive, you will see for yourself how the general and his family will become awakened. Meanwhile, Jin had already absorbed the gardener skill. He was very surprised, because in his previous life, one person could have one profession. But it's time to get used to these worlds being different. A gardener is like a blacksmith with more than one professional skill, because compared to the blacksmith, the gardener has two skills: cultivate and activate. Cultivation helps to tend and grow plants faster than they should. Well, here activation is a way of controlling the plant. Past life, Jin saw a plant that had evolved continuously. Even the 9-star mutated humans and monster kings didn't dare to go near this tree. It was known as the Celestial Tree. 1535, even if you don't count the mutated plant. Jins can now grow fruits and vegetables for his sustenance. Jin cornered the monster and said, give me more or you die. As expected, the monster doesn't want to die. Stop, it's not a scroll or a potion, then what is it? So that it wouldn't be, Jin decided to duck. And rightly so, that little idiot threw a bomb at Jin instead of a scroll. Good thing it was just a smoke grenade. Well, when the smoke cleared, Jin saw something completely new in front of him. He had never seen such a monster before. From the looks of it, this monster is at least rank 3. If that's the case, it's foolish to fight it. It's very strange, but this monster doesn't have a crystal for some reason. Jin knew absolutely nothing about this monster. The only thing that was clear was that its body was made of strong acid, and if so, the blood moon is useless. By attempting to attack, Jin will lose his sword. At dinner came up with a plan, how to win this battle. Fortunately, there was a small water fountain nearby. Jin remembered his novice summoning skill. Skills like these rarely work the first time. So the genie can only believe in miracles. Absorbing the scroll at the spot where Jin dipped his hand, the water began to boil. Did a great job of summoning the water monster the first time, despite its seemingly harmless appearance. This monster is incredibly dangerous. Its attacks can make a huge hole in any object, and this acid monster was no exception. Water monster that Jin summoned has both strengths and weaknesses. On the good side, it's invulnerable. On the bad side, the summon only lasts for a minute. In that time, Jin must have time to deal with the draft. Otherwise, it was all for nothing. Well, they meet again. Jin won't fall for his tricks this time. It's funny to watch the monster panic at the sight of a human and tries to run away. And this was clearly not Jin's plan. Why, for once, things can't go smoothly. As suddenly, the squad leader shouted, what belongs to me will belong to me. Fire. Literally, at the last moment, Jin managed to jump behind a block of stone. But what should he do now? At first, he wanted to give the monster them and ambush them, and then take the summoner. But the risk of the calling treasures falling into the wrong hands is too high. So Gina decided to take a chance. Luckily, he always carries a firearm just for such occasions. Field them. With a dense rain of bullets, the genie managed to get close to the draft in one piece. Finally, Jin caught him. Now the draft will definitely not escape. It's time to get the reward. In his previous life, every time Jin hunted monsters with treasure, there were chaotic battles with a mortality rate of over 60%, 1566, but today is different. Jin will be the only winner. As suddenly, Jin felt seriously threatened. How long is this going to go on? To the genie, had to let go of the draft for a while, to keep his hands safe. The attack passed exactly between them. But the draft, not as good a reaction as Jin's. That's why he lost his arm. If Jin hadn't sensed something was wrong, and hadn't ducked in time, he might have been the one who would have lost his arm. There were 3 masterminds behind this attack. Ruthless and bloodthirsty. Perfectly adapted to the conditions of the apocalypse. No matter how cool they are, Jin isn't ready to just part with his loot. If his right hand was in perfect condition, Jin was able to handle them. But she was badly damaged. And fighting 3 winners at the same time is unrealistic. Other than dodging, Jin has no other way to survive. But Jin still had his mind, since the primary purpose of the awakened was the summoning. They would follow him wherever he went, and Jean decided to help him do it. Of course, there's a risk of losing the treasure, but at the risk of staying alive is as good as it gets. So now everyone in the neighborhood knew where the draft was, and the best way to get rid of all the competitors at once is to stratify them among themselves. Jean, you almost blew this hunt. Well, there's still a chance of success. Meanwhile, it's already evening, and the Meow Squad is still holding back the rank 4 monster. They managed to seriously injure its leg, but their strength was already running low. Some members of the group were even wounded. 1583. And as luck would have it, the last bullet Jean gave her was gone. We need to put it to good use. As suddenly, Meow notices Ms. Pooh making her way through crowds of zombies through the ruined city. Last time Meow saw her, she was with the genie. And if she's here, the genie must be around here somewhere. Without thinking long, Meow jumped down from the window to talk to Pooh. 1587. At first glance, jumping from the 9th floor might seem like a reckless act, but it's worth considering that she's evolved. Here they met. They were both insanely happy to see each other. How suddenly not coaxed. Pooh, why are you here? How are you feeling? And where are Jin and Chu? Without time and drop a word on fell because the earth shook. But what could have caused it was an earthquake. I mean, it's not typical of this region. Turned around, the girls saw a huge prisoner in chains. The only thing left for them to do is run. When she saw him, she pointed her finger at him and said, "The last time I saw Jin, he was walking toward that monster." When Chalk heard that, she thought Jin was already dead. After all, there wasn't a scratch on the monster. And Jin hadn't been seen for a long time. But Pooh was looking for Meow to go to Chu's aid, because she saw that Chu was surrounded. It seems to me that Jin has been preparing. He has to find something. He won't provoke that monster, added Pooh, especially since the 3 of them have a better chance of finding Jin. After thinking it over, Meow agreed to go to Chu's aid. But then Meow noticed that her battle buddies had decided to follow her. I don't know where. Before she went to help Chu, she introduced Ms. Pooh to her friends. Is the first mission of their new squad will be a rescue mission codenamed Chu and her sisters. Meanwhile, Chu had already dealt with half of the bandits, but she was running out of strength. During the battle, she received several wounds, but even so, she continues to fight. This survivor proved to be a worthy opponent for Chu. But you have to take into account that Chu was fighting alone. There's a whole squad of them, half of whom are no longer alive. Fortunately, the whip that Jin gave can also be used as a defense weapon. Catching them in the act of reloading, Chu decided to attack. If this continues, Chu won't get out of this mess alive.